You're tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. This podcast will contain strong language and spoilers for decades-old media properties.
Join us.
Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast where we examine pop culture franchises of the VHS era, now in Season 4, for we heard you implore with uproar that you want more of the lore and the gore that pour from our rapport, just a couple of hardcore story whore hipsor dinosaurs who mourn for the yore before they forevermore secured the door at our best adored video rental store, and therefore we imagine how we might improve our favorite movies, TV, and games. I'm Josh.
I don't know who the hell I am anymore, but I guess Mike.
And we were raised by rentals. Mike, did you hear they were starting Season 4?
I gathered that. Wow, I was not expecting that. You caught me off guard with that opening.
I got too much time on my hands on a Sunday afternoon. So if you couldn't figure it out, dear listeners, we are back, and welcome back to all of you for rejoining us once more for Raised by Rentals Season 4. I can't believe we made it to Season 4. This is our 87th episode.
Jesus Christ, 87th already?
Yeah, up to 87, which means that if we can maintain a decent schedule for Season 4, then we will hit our 100th episode this season.
Damn. Okay, that's something to shoot for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say it right now that, again, as long as the schedule doesn't get screwed up, we should be able to do a really fun, like, summer blockbuster type of special for the 100th episode. Our 25th episode was Summer School 2, The Dave and Chainsaw Massacre, which was like a perfect summer movie. Our 50th episode was Ernest Goes to Slasher Camp. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And our 75th episode was Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter Got Whacked, which was like a fun summer comedy.
That's true. That's true.
So we got to do another like cool, fun summer movie, and we'll talk offline, Mike. We've talked about doing a couple of different ideas. I think we actually have two. I think that we're going to end up doing a double feature for our 100th episode summer special, but we'll talk about it later.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I think I'm picking up on what you're laying down, and I think that's gonna be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and by the way, listeners, stick around. At the end of the episode, we are going to announce the winner of the Morgue File vote. That's the pick that you guys voted on our social media for the dead episode idea. We talked about it in the last episode, the Morgue File of Season 3. That's our year in review for 2024. And you guys voted on which of the episode ideas that we had pulled off the schedule that we decided we weren't going to do. They were dead ideas, and we promised that whichever one won the vote, we would do that one. We would take your idea and turn it into an actual episode in Season 4. And so stick around. We'll announce the winner at the end. But for today, for the first episode, the inaugural that is not the right word. For the inaugural improv of Season 4, we are hearkening back to our original episode where we said, hey, there was this idea that was floating around in Hollywood with the actual movie makers of the Friday the 13th franchise about doing a Friday the 13th with Jason in the snow. Instead of having it be, summertime like it is in every other Friday the 13th movie, this would be wintertime. And that, to me, sounds freaking great. Of course, we both used to talk about that idea all the time, and it's what led to us doing that first episode and the whole podcast in general. So we thought it would be fun this time to do something very similar where we're going to take a look at an idea that had been talked about in Hollywood, that had been floated to the public, but never came to fruition, which is a third installment in John Carpenter's Escape from New York, Escape from LA franchise called Escape from Earth.
Yep. And it was Escape from Earth. It was Escape from Mars. Eventually, the Escape from Mars script got turned into the Ghosts of Mars script, which is one of the few John Carpenter films I am not a fan of. And the only reason I'm not much of a fan of it, well, I shouldn't say the only reason, one of the only reasons that I'm not a fan of it is because it uses one of my most hated storytelling tropes, which is the main character is telling you the story. So every time that person is put in peril, you don't care because they live. and I hate that fucking trope. It drives me insane. Like, it's fine if it's like a secondary character, like somebody who was also there. Just don't put them in peril, because we know they live. But yeah, Ghosts of Mars really bothered me because Natasha Henstridge's character, I forget her character's name, she's telling the story of what happened on Mars. So every time she almost dies, it's like, well, clearly she doesn't die. She's telling us the story. Stop it. So
yeah, there was one time that trope came up in a story where it did throw me for a loop, but in a way that the author probably didn't intend, because I ended up not wanting to finish the story, and I didn't. It was a novel by Brad Meltzer, who he wrote Identity Crisis for DC back in the day. He wrote some comics for DC in the early 2000s, but he's a novelist. He's written a lot of like political thrillers, and I wanted to read one of his novels, so I randomly grabbed the Zero game because they happened to have it at the library on like the suggested shelf. And spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't want this novel ruined for you, the first person narrator of the novel throughout the first part of it gets fucking killed, and then the narration just changes to another character's first person narration. Like, the first guy's dead, telling the story in the past tense, and then he just fucking dies. And I was so pissed off, like, how the fuck is this dead person telling the story? And I just couldn't finish the novel. I tried. I read it a little bit more, but I'm like, you know what? I don't give a shit.
It's like a narrator relay. He just passed it off to the next guy.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I guess, credit to him for trying something to, like, keep people on their toes, but it just did not work.
Yeah, no, that's bad. But see, now just to jump right in here, we're going to talk about another Hollywood trope that I fucking hate, because we're talking about the Escape franchise, and I've mentioned this multiple times. I know we're going to talk about Escape and from LA and New York, but the ticking clock. I fucking hate the ticking clock. I mean, granted, we gonna do it again because it's Escape from Earth. We got to have the ticking clock, but I fucking hate the ticking clock. Now, it's bad in Escape from New York. It's very bad. Like, of course, he's gonna get the detonators neutralized at the last second, of course. But Escape from LA is even worse, because there's times in there where there's like 15 minutes left, and it's like, okay, you're gonna hang glide in, you're gonna fight the bad guys, you're gonna steal a chopper, you're gonna fly out of LA, and you're gonna land in time to be saved. Like, I know that's not how it worked out, but in his head, he was landing in time to be saved. And it's like, no, stop it. That's like, I think the absolute worst one I've ever seen, I've bitched about this on the Boogeyman's Closet, is Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. Now, I know I'm odd man out. I fucking hate that movie. I know a lot of people like it. I'm just going to say that the end scene, like, there were parts I could forgive. There were scenes where I was like, that's cool. That's a cool scene. That's interesting. That's a cool fight. The fucking end, where it's like they literally only had 15 minutes before this bomb was going to drop. They had to fly on a helicopter from one side of Vegas to the other, land on a building, fight their way through, get to the people that they were trying to get back to the helicopter, and fly to safety before the fucking bomb dropped. I'm like, that would not happen. 15 minutes is not that long. Like, stop it.
Right. Well, and like, I could be remembering it wrong, even though I literally just watched the movie today. But in Escape from LA, he only has like 8 hours, and there's no fucking way that all of the events of the movie took place in only 8 hours. There's no way. Like, I know we saw it on the screen in less than 2, but like in real time, there's no way that would have happened in less than 8 hours.
Right. We're not counting travel time or any, like, because that's why the ticking clock bothers me so bad, is because the way it's used is it's like, oh, it's in real time that we're watching on the screen. But you don't take into account in the context of the story, these people have to move from place to place. And hell, just driving down the road sometimes it's like a 5-minute ordeal if there's traffic.
Like, right? Yeah. It's like in Escape from New York too, it's even worse because it's really inconsistent. Like they keep showing his little wrist countdown clock, but like what's on the screen doesn't match up with what they're talking about, right? They initially tell Snake that he's going to have 24 hours, and then within his first conversation with Hauk, where he like gets the details of the mission, it's like, oh well, it's only going to be 22 hours. He's like, wait, you said 24. Well, it's actually 22. But then they program the clock on his wristband to 23 hours. So it's like, wait, hang on a second. And then by the time he gets into New York, he looks at his clock, his watch, and like even with like the mismatch 22-23, it's been like a half an hour. And I'm like, there is no way that he got outfitted. He got, you know, those like injections in his neck. He had all these conversations. He flew across the river, like flew into town, like crashed the glider, got down in the building. That did not happen in 30 minutes. Like there is no way.
Exactly. I hate it. Like the ticking clock creates so many of those types of tropes. The time inconsistencies, all that. Like the ticking clock is my most hated trope in all of Hollywood. I fucking can't stand it. But I mean, we're gonna do it again, so I might as well just resign myself to it.
Yeah. Well, but we'll see how it fits in. We'll see how it fits in because, you know, just initially based on like the little bit of spitballing that you and I did ahead of time before we started recording, like I'm not sure that we're necessarily going to have Snake Plissken running around with like a wristband clock on again, but I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I mean, I don't think that we'll go that far, but there will definitely, I'm imagining at least with the concept we have, that there's going to be some kind of a ticking clock of like, oh, we got to do this in time, otherwise we're all gonna die.
Exactly. So what would Escape from Earth, what would that have been like? Like what would have happened for this movie to exist in a trilogy with these other two? And I mentioned that because the first two movies are really, really similar to each other. Like really similar. Like when I was watching Escape from LA again today, and granted, I haven't seen this movie probably since it came out on home video, like, you know, in like the mid 90s. So it's been a really long time, and I'm watching it, and for the good, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes, I'm like, is this just a remake? Is this like one of those sequels that's really just a remake? Because it's like the same thing beat for beat, but it's like a submarine instead of a glider or whatever. But, you know, it's like a virus instead of like a bomb in his neck. But it's the same stuff happening. And eventually they do reference back to the first movie, so it can't be a remake. But like, it might as well have been.
Well, and that's one of the things that it suffered from at the time. Like, and again, I'm totally guilty of this, and I'm kind of picking up on that. You're not a fan of of Escape from LA, but like when I first saw it, I hated it, and you know I was young, but keep in mind when I was a kid, like I had seen Escape from New York, but it wasn't one of those movies that I watched ad nauseum. Like I watched it whenever it was on, but by the time Escape from LA came out, like I was a teenager. I wasn't paying that much attention to like action movies. I was mostly like into horror at that point. So like Escape from LA was on my radar because I love Kurt Russell, but I was just like, it didn't do it for me. And I hated all the bad CGI. But like I was gonna say, the time that it came out, it did horrible. And the two biggest things that it was criticized for was being far too similar to the original, so people didn't know if it was a remake or a sequel. And surprisingly, it was criticized heavily for its violence.
Okay.
Which, you know, I mean, I guess 1996 was a different time, but it's like watching it, I'm like, yeah, okay, there's some violent moments, like, you know, there's a lot of people getting shot and people getting punched, and you know, like there's definitely some violence toward women in it. Like Cuervo is a bit of a dick, and you know, that chick that helps out Snake in the beginning gets shot in the gut, and like, you know, so it's like, yeah, there's definitely some violence, but it's no more violent than, you know, what's on television now. Like,
yeah. Oh, I mean, it wasn't any more violent than the other action movies that were coming out at the same time. Yeah, like that's really strange. Yeah, there wasn't any gore really. It's just all gunfire really. All the violence is. But again, and I know this was like 1996, but you think like there's been a whole legacy up to this point of like Lethal Weapon movies and Schwarzenegger movies, and it's like, what is some machine gun fire?
The thing that got me when I read that is I was like, wait. This reminded me of another failed 90s action movie in its action scope, and that was Waterworld. Waterworld came out in
Oh, yeah.
1995, and it was very much just as violent. Like, people were getting blown up and shot and crazy, nonsensical action moments. But that was a PG-13 movie. That was like a summer blockbuster.
Mhm.
Whereas, and I feel like it's because, Escape from LA. It's like, oh, it's a sequel to that other Carpenter movie, and Carpenter does all those horror movies. It's rated R.
Yep.
The MPAA they're a bunch of fucking pricks. If you ever look into how they
Mhm.
figure out the rating system, and Carpenter's always had a bad rap with these guys. Same thing with Wes Craven. So it could have just been one of those where it's just like, oh, it's that Carpenter guy. Fuck him. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just watching a video yesterday about Clerks, where Clerks originally was supposed to be rated like NC-17 or unrated straight to video, but just because of the language, right, and all the sexual situations. Even though there's no nudity, there's no on-screen, sex of any kind. The violence that is on screen is like comical. Like Randall and Dante get into kind of a fight that you barely see, but it eventually ended up getting an R rating, not because they did anything. They literally made no cuts, but just because the unnamed exec at Miramax went to the MPAA with like a check. It was like, hey, let's do business. That's literally, and then it was like, okay, fine, we'll give you an R rating and like put it in 100 theaters or whatever. But they made zero cuts.
There was, God, I wish I could remember the name of the documentary, but it's funny because John Carpenter is interviewed in this documentary that I'm thinking of. It's talking about American horror movies, and one of the sections they talk about the MPAA, and they break down some of the rules for the MPAA. During a sex scene, they count the thrusts. So you have a limited number of thrusts before you get an X or unrated section. You can only have so many before it's. I forget what that number was, but he was like, imagine sitting in a theater, not enjoying the film, but instead counting how many times someone humps. Like, that is ridiculous.
Yeah,
Or like how many times a certain swear word is said, and like how many shits equate to a fuck. Like, you can have one fuck, but how many shits can you have? And it's like that level of fucking bureaucracy is, I hate it. It's just like that kind of censorship pisses me off.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Back to Escape from New York and Escape from LA. We'll kind of mix in like some facts and figures, and I'll kind of give my impression on the movie at the same time, so we can kind of jump in to figuring out what we want to do for Escape from Earth. But yeah, Escape from New York came out in 1981, so this is early 80s, right? Early John Carpenter, before or after Halloween, but before his other like big horror hits that he had with The Fog and The Thing, especially The Thing, Christine. Starman's not a horror movie, but it was a big one in the 80s. At least I was a big fan of it. And Big Trouble in Little China, They Live. I mean, hell, even John Carpenter's Vampires is a great movie. So he had like a string. I wouldn't call them hits because they weren't all critically acclaimed, but just a bunch of really good movies. And this is typically included in his list of hits. Like, oh yeah, John Carpenter made a bunch of like cool movies all through like the 80s and early 90s. And I'll say, like, my opinion of Escape from New York has waned over the years. I used to really like it in the way that I liked a movie like They Live, where I don't think it's the greatest movie ever made, but it's just fun. It's a fun movie, right? Cool things happen in it, but like when you take a step back and look at it, like, there's lots of cracks,
Oh, absolutely.
But I find that the more I see it, the more I kind of feel that way. The more I'm like, I'm having a hard time having fun with it. Whereas I feel the opposite with Escape from LA, where I didn't want to fucking see it when it came out in 1996. I thought it looked awful. At the time, I thought it was probably some kind of like terrible cash grab. Like, you didn't really see a lot of sequels coming out 15 years later, like in the 90s, and now you see, these legacy sequels that come out, fucking 30 or even 40 years later, and people love it. But at the time, I feel like, really, Escape from LA? Like, you're going back to that, like, tired old well? Like, you couldn't do something else? And then when I did see it, it was like terrible CGI, even for the mid 90s. Like, again, it's really repetitive of the first movie. There's like some ridiculous action sequences, like to fucking surfing, through LA, and like the hang gliding, and like it's just silly characters. I hated it when I first saw it, and I never wanted to see it again. But then when I did see it again, I was able to have fun with it. And I think
Yep.
maybe just because like I knew what I was going into that second time, and I was able to
Mhm.
just like stop waiting for it to get better and just, you know what, I'm just gonna enjoy it. And now I do. I do enjoy Escape from LA. I think it's way too
Okay.
long, and I definitely get bored at parts. But yeah, I think Escape from LA is like an underrated. I wouldn't say it's a gem, but it's if you like these types of movies, if you like horror movies and action movies, it's worth a watch because it's just fun and stupid.
See, now I'm a huge fan of Escape from New York. When I was a kid, I liked it. I still fucking love it. But yeah, like I said earlier, I did not like Escape from LA when I first saw it. It was the CGI was so fucking bad, and it is so fucking bad. Like it's Anaconda levels bad.
Oh yeah.
It the scene where Snake first gets in the submarine, you can already see like, that looks weird. And then when it's traveling underwater, it's like, oh my god, this looks like the opening to like a Sega CD video game. Um, and then
Yeah.
like when you see the shark try to bite it, I'm like, holy shit, it's Eternal Champion CD. Like it's bad. It's like it's very bad video game graphics. But that being said, watching it now, I had a fucking blast with it because it's like it's so quintessentially 90s. I mean, like you said, there's surfing and there's hang gliding and there's just like nonsensical gun battles and Snake goes from wearing like his camo pants and a tank top to wearing like all black leather and like giant boots. It just screams 90s. Like you feel like fucking White Zombie and Typo Negative is going to be playing in the background. Like, it's
Absolutely.
it's so fun.
Yeah, I agree. It's a fun movie. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I did hear some Tool at one point on the soundtrack. I wasn't really like shazamming the music as I was watching it today, but I'm like, that sounds like Tool? Yeah.
Yep.
um, but the cast is great, and the cast makes
Oh
up
god, yeah.
for any shortcomings in like the filmmaking or the storytelling. The casts for both movies is fucking great. And again, I don't want to belabor the point. I want to get into the meat of things here, but like just fucking Ernest Borgnine, Donald Pleasance, Isaac Hayes, Harry Dean Stanton, fucking Adrian Barbeau, of course.
Of course, gotta have Adrian Barbeau.
I love Tom Atkins. It took me a second to recognize him for some reason. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it's that guy, like the guy who's in all those '80s movies. What's that guy? It took me
Oh,
a minute.
I love him. And side note, he is a damn nice person. He's one of those celebrity meetings where I was just like, you know what? They say don't meet your heroes, but damn it, he was cool.
That is cool. Yeah, I always love that. I love hearing stories. I'm afraid to meet people, especially with like some recent like celebrities being like outed in the media recently. I'm just like, man, we're right
Yeah.
back to like canceling people, but there's like some shitty stuff going on, and it's like it's
Oh
making
yeah.
making me disappointed in people. Where I don't know that I want to meet anybody, but
Yeah,
but
it is tough because when you meet the ones that end up being a dick, it's real disappointment. Or when you see something that it's like an undeniable like shitty thing someone did, you're like, oh man. It's that whole. I always think of the you either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. As
yeah.
I always think about that when that happens, it's like, well, another one falls.
Yeah, it's been happening lately. It's a bummer, but
Yeah.
I've never met Bruce Campbell myself. But from all the people I know who have met him, who say that he's an absolute darling, I hope that that's true because I love him. He's in Escape from L.A.
Yes.
Along with fucking Peter Fonda. What's her name? Valeria Golino, right?
Yep.
She kind of disappeared out of Hollywood, but she was in a bunch of fun movies at the time. Of course, Pam Grier. I fucking love anything that Steve Buscemi's in. Literally anything that Steve Buscemi's in, I like to watch. And I'm a huge fan of Stacy Keach.
I was just gonna say we can't forget Stacy Keats. Come on.
I fucking love that dude. He's amazing.
I was waiting for it because I'm like, class of 1999. Come on, say
Hell
it.
yeah, of course. He's so good. He's good in everything. I love that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the movies, they both play out pretty much the same way, right? Snake Plissken is this ex like special ops operative or something. They mentioned it a little bit without getting too much into the specifics the way he did in the past. They mentioned like Leningrad and Cleveland at different times where some shit went down. But in both situations, he gets recruited unwillingly and sort of like physically coerced, I guess we'll use that word, like into going on a mission for the government. And I almost said the U.S. government, but I'm not even sure that that's exactly true, because this is like this post-apocalyptic world where New York City and then later L.A. become these walled off prison colonies where they dump all the undesirables. And especially in the second movie, Escape from L.A., it's clear that this is a moral war, right? This is a very the president is a very conservative, like religious person who's trying to get rid of all the the sinners and stick them all out in Hollywood with all the rest of those filthy people. But Snake he gets put on this mission again in the first movie because they put like bombs in his neck, in the second movie because they threatened him with being infected with a virus. So he feels like he has to go on a mission to rescue first the president himself, and then rescue/kill the president's daughter in the second movie. And there's this ticking clock again because he has to get back to get like the antidote for the time bomb in his body. And in both situations there's like a gang leader within the city. There was the Duke of New York, and then there's Cuervo, who it's like, is it Jose Cuervo? Is this guy like the tequila king of LA or what?
Oh, guys, I forget his other name, but it is something Cuervo. It does sound like Jose Cuervo, but it's not. It's I know, I can't remember now. I had it just up on the screen, now I lost it. but yeah, it's like the Duke of New York, played by Isaac Hayes. That character I really like. I think the Duke is fun. I also love, every time I think of Escape from New York, I immediately picture Donald Pleasance saying, "You're Duke of New York, hey, #1." Like that. Yes. The way he says it cracks me up every fucking time. But yeah, Cuervo is more comical than Isaac Hayes played the Duke, even though the Duke is more flamboyant. It's, yeah. I don't know. I really like, there's a level of seriousness with Escape from New York where it's like all of the goofiness comes a little bit from Cabby, from Ernest Borgnine's character, which again, man, fucking Ernest Borgnine is so damn good in that movie. Yeah. I fucking love, it's like this dark, bleak, like creepy New York, and then Snake walks into that like playhouse and like everyone just looks miserable and like dying or in a drug coma, and there's Ernest Borgnine with his giant fucking eyebrows just living it up, and it's like, I fucking love him. He's so good.
He's delightful.
He really is. Oh man, but yeah, so you got Ernest Borgnine in the first one playing Cabby with his massive eyebrows, and then you got Steve Buscemi with his weird eyes playing Map to the Stars Eddie, which is basically the same kind of character.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. Like the characters, there are parallels, and I think we could go through probably every character and through the plot, and we'd see how they match up. Like to understand my point of like, was this just a remake? I was trying to figure that out when I was watching Escape from LA, but. Maybe at the time, because legacy sequels weren't really a thing, maybe they felt like they were they trying to get away with just doing the same movie again, or was it more of like, hey, let's do a callback, like let's remind you of what was going on in the first movie by sort of repeating it. I recently watched Friday the 13th Part 2 with Griffin, and I had to explain to him why there's this like extended sequence at the beginning of the movie where they just show clips from the previous movie, and it was like, well, back in the day before home video was just everywhere and people could easily watch whatever movie they wanted, like at that time in the 70s and the early 80s, if you wanted to see a movie again, you had to go to the movie theater and see it again, and people would go to the movie theater all the time. It was a much more common practice to just go to the movie theater because you couldn't watch everything at home. And so when a sequel came out, even if it was just like the year after the first one, they had to remind people what happened because there was no guarantee that you'd be able to go watch the first one again.
Well, and it was like with TV shows, like when a new season would start, it would be like previously on, and they would tell you kind of like give you the summary of what happened at the end of the previous season before starting the new season. Unlike now, where it's like a season is like, you have a season of like 6 episodes or whatever, and then 3 months later you have the next season. Whereas before it was like the season would end and it would be like 6 to 8 months, maybe a year before you got. I mean, we're kind of getting back to that now, but with the advent of streaming. But
But with streaming, you can literally just go watch the end of the previous episode
Right.
before you watch the new one, which is what I do. Like whenever a new
Same.
season comes out, I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do, I'll either go ahead and watch the recap, fine, but I usually feel like I get more out of it by just going back and watching at least most of the previous episode, the finale of the last season, and then I just keep going as if there was no break.
Yep. But one thing I wanted to mention before we jump into it, when you were talking about like, is this a remake? Is this a sequel? It follows the same kind of vibe as Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Whereas technically Evil Dead 2 is a sequel, but because Raimi couldn't get the rights to the first movie to do like a recap using that, he had to like recast, and he chopped out the friends. So it was just like that opening like 5 minutes of Evil Dead 2 is technically, it's not Ash going back to the cabin. It's them recapping the first movie, but because he couldn't use the footage, it was like, well, fuck it, let's just kind of rewrite it. And then it picks up like Evil Dead 2, the proper sequel portion picks up with Ash turning into the possessed version of Ash in the forest. And then, the sunlight stopping, and he's like, ah! Because at the end of the first movie, the camera slams into him, and we see like, oh no, the Deadites got him. And then in part 2, it picks up with him flying through the woods, falling in the puddle, and turning into the Deadite. But they did that recap first, which confused a ton of people, myself included, thinking it was a remake of part 1 and not a sequel.
Yeah,
so
same
it's
here.
like,
I thought it was a remake for years.
Same, yeah. And that's kind of how Escape from LA feels.
Yeah, even though they called it Evil Dead 2, I always just thought that was like a marketing thing because it was just a remake, of a low budget movie that nobody's fucking saw.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, so I only wanted to get into that because I feel like there is an opportunity for us to like structure our Escape from Earth third part with a similar outline that the first 2 movies had if we wanted to like keep in line. So it's almost like there's a shorthand we could follow where there's a plot outline just waiting for us to use, or we could break from that tradition and maybe allude to some of the same concepts while going off and doing something maybe a little bit more original for what for this installment, where if it had existed in real life, it would have been like a big budget Hollywood movie at a time when John Carpenter was really famous, and people would have easily been able to go back and watch Escape from LA, so they wouldn't have needed to copy it. So we could go either way.
Yeah, no, I think that there are definitely elements that we can probably pull, but I don't want to fit us too much into a mold because I feel like we'll get tripped up some, especially because that's like it's kind of boring to do the same thing again.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you said that.
I do feel like there are going to be bits. Like I feel like there can be archetype characters that we can play with. And I feel like obviously the ticking clock, because, there's the whole escape. Like, what is he escaping from? Okay, this time it's Earth. Like, why is he escaping from Earth? Okay, let's figure that out. So we're going to have some kind of a ticking clock. So yeah, there'll be parallels, but I don't think we have to like be so beholden, that we do the same story again.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, I think we can just jump in right now and let's start with something that they did do in the first 2 movies, which is, we start with, I'll call it the crawl, even though that it didn't actually have like words like, slowly crawl across the screen into the distance. But I'm not sure what else you call these sorts of credits at the beginning of a movie where they kind of explain the backstory of what happened.
They tell you a little bit about the world you're about to hear a story from. So it's like that quick encapsulation, like here's what happened to why New York is a prison. Here is why LA is cut off from society. And I kind of like with New York, it was all about crime rates. It was all about, which was a very prevalent thing in the 80s, where it was like all about, like think of every New York action film. New York, like 80s New York was a fucking cesspool, according to like films, so like it makes sense that the thing of the times would be, oh, of course the government's going to shut it off because there's too much crime and the government wants to control everything. Was that era of the United States. Well, a lot hasn't changed, but no politics. But
yeah, no, but you're right. Like if the news made us believe anything, it's that like all of New York City was like Police Academy 2, right?
Yes.
With a bunch of like gang members living in like a graffiti riddled zoo.
I forgot they lived in a zoo.
But like, yeah, and like in all seriousness, like if you go back and you look at like photographs of New York in the 80s, it was like graffiti all over the subway, and like Times Square was like a really dangerous and like seedy place to be. And there was a concerted effort all through the 90s, from the mayors and the government of New York to clean up the city because it had that reputation. They really put a lot of money into the effort to make the subways, safer, to totally, give Times Square a facelift so that you could see it on TRL by the year 2000, but shit, man, if they put Times Square on live TV back in the 80s, it wouldn't have been nothing but like porn theaters,
Exactly. But like now and let's examine this. So we know that Carpenter, he hated the Reagan era United States. Let's just say he really didn't like the Reagan era, which, hey, that's understandable. But in the 90s, so his commentary was like about control, about police states, military control. So obviously Escape from New York made sense to that era. Escape from LA, what is the reason that LA became this dumping ground for anyone that was losing their citizenship from the United States? It was immorality. And if you remember, like the early 90s, I'm sure we could do an entire podcast about this, the rise of the televangelist preacher, the populist, new Christianity, like the new version of like a moral society. And like, you heard a lot about that. Like it was like the morality police were constantly, you had the creation of the ESRB, the creation of the parental guidance on music, all of that like moral outrage of the 90s was being summed up in this movie. And in fact, the president character was based on Pat Robinson. So it's like, of course it makes sense. And I love that at the start of the of Escape from LA, where this president is talking about how there's going to be an earthquake, and it's going to be a reckoning and judgment day, and it's going to separate the heathens in LA from the rest of society and cast them out, and then that actually happens. So he becomes the forever president because for moral reasons. And then like at the end of the movie, we have that whole comment where it's like, this is America. You can't smoke. And he's like, you can't eat red meat, no alcohol, no women. And then Snake is like, land of the free. So it's like they're commenting on that whole moral outrage of the 90s. Which, I like Carpenter's little much like Romero. I love his little commentaries on society.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, the rise of the religious right in the 90s was, clearly a pretty heavy influence on this. But yeah, so let's keep that in mind as we go ahead with this and think about, what would another sequel, like what would that have looked like in terms of like social commentary? I don't know when Escape from Earth was supposed to have been made, or if it would be made now. I don't know. I don't think it really matters, but let's just kind of dive into it, right? So we start with this, again, I'll use the word crawl, this explanation of what came before. And, we see that, yes, back in all the way back in the 80s when the crime started to rise. By 1997 is when the events Escape from New York happened, and then it was about 16 years later when Escape from LA happens, where you get a different president, this guy who becomes the forever president. I don't even remember if they named him. Even when he introduced himself, he says, "I'm your president," which I thought was very telling.
I'm gonna look it up real quick. I don't think they do name him. I think he's just he's just president.
Yeah, I think that's a message in that in and of itself. Yeah. But so at the end of Escape from LA, what we find out is that the sword of Damocles was engaged or was activated, and that was this, what was it, like a system of like satellites that was like a giant EMP that took out all technology on Earth. And it was originally supposed to be targeted specifically to enemy states. It was a weapon that, again, I'll use the word US or the talk about the United States, even though I'm not sure that's exactly the correct like political entity we're talking about. But the US built this and they were going to use it against their enemies, to destroy technologically, China or Russia or whatever, and send them back to the Stone Age, I guess. And Snake ends up activating it for the whole Earth, plunges the globe into darkness because all technology fails. Lights stop working, electricity doesn't work, and it just like fades to black from there. So that's where we need to start. We explained that, and I'm not going to do it word for word, but just kind of like that's the backstory. And we need to start in an environment now where it's like, think of like The Walking Dead, right? So it's like
Absolutely.
In this post-apocalypse where the apocalypse was the crash of technology, where do people end up? And of course, I think that most obvious is there's going to be some continuation of that gang culture that we saw in both New York and LA. But then I think that there's going to be like a return to like a rural agricultural lifestyle, probably forced on a lot of people, but that's kind of the environment that I'm picturing. Like, we open on like a farm somewhere.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, there would have to be, because there's not going to be any more modern conveniences. All of technology is wiped out. So it's like we're back to the fucking Stone Ages. So refrigeration's gone, all that kind of stuff is gone. Fuel is going to be limited. Eventually they're going to have no fuel. So yeah, I feel like we would have the new rule of law would be that there is no rule of law. The strong survive. It would be like a Darwinian nightmare. Mankind would just be like, oh shit, like all the weak, the weak would be fucking gobbled up by the strong, which is fucked up. But I mean, we already saw that happening in both New York and LA. So yeah, I think in this like opening montage, we would see like something like, mere days after the Sword of Damocles incident, the entire world was thrown into chaos, like something like that. And then we'd see like little images of like fires and explosions and people killing each other in the streets, people hanging themselves, just like horrible chaos, like just panning by. And then have it basically talking about the rise of gang rule. So picture like almost like a Mad Max style thing, like with Lord Humongous, and like there would be these gangs that would be like taking over like quadrants of different, like let's set it in the United States, because the other two were. So like they would be taking over like sections of the US. And then to your point about like there would have to be agricultural. What if we have something like, there would, because of course in a chaotic world like that, you would have the people, you would have religious people, and it could almost be like, a new religion, like maybe like a merging of like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, like some kind of weird, new world order type idea. But like have these people like that believe that by being, pious and selfless, or like living a life of piety, that whole thing, like they could help mankind. So they start to like be the farmers. They start to be the people who are like distilling beer, like making some kind of alcohol, so the gangs would be like, okay, wait, they're gonna like, maybe that's how it happens. Like we see the gangs killing each other, and they, people are wounded, and then these like more religious people start helping to heal them, like, cleaning their wounds, all that kind of stuff. So we see like almost like a neutral zone or neutral zones, like little areas where there's going to be like picture like New World monks, let's call them. Like they're the new monks. They're growing crops, they're raising livestock, they're, giving people like travelers a place to rest. So yeah, like just some kind of like a safe haven, and the gangs all kind of agree, almost like a shark with, what is it, a remora that suck her onto sharks.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So almost like that, like the gangs are like, all right, you know what, you helping me out, I'll let you live. Like no fighting in the neutral zones. Like you step outside the neutral zone, you're fucking dead. But inside the neutral zone, we ain't gonna fight, because that's where our food is. So it's something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And it's interesting that you mentioned, like them being monks, because wouldn't that be like a really sort of a fuck you to the religious right who caused all this trouble in the first place if the unexpected outcome of this like return to like the dark ages is that you get Christians and Muslims and Jews and different religious organizations who they all sort of agree that something terrible happened, like it was the end of the world and like prophecies were fulfilled, and then a lot of them start working together and you
Yeah.
get this religious peace that you'd never had in like 2000 years.
I like that. I didn't even think of that angle. Yes, but no, that makes perfect sense because of like, yeah, apocalypse. It happened.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, we're starting over. Let's have peace among us. Like, I like that concept. And then so like all the different monks they could come from every type of background. You could have, fucking Buddhist and Muslim and Christian and Jewish, and I think that's a really cool idea. I like that.
Yeah, and I like this idea that you mentioned of having like these neutral zones too, because that reminds me of, you think of about the Old Testament, think of the Bible when the 12 tribes of Israel were being set up. And I'm not going to get into a whole like lesson here, but
Right.
the Levites, right, the tribe of
Mhm.
Levi, they were supposed to be the priestly tribe, and they never had their own land that was granted to them, but they had these Levite cities. They had their own cities, and they were like neutral zones. Like you said, there wasn't supposed to be any violence there. People would go there to have like religious like services, and if somebody was like wanted like for murder or whatever, they could go to a Levite city like it was a sanctuary where they could be safe until they could have like a fair trial. So they so like if they hurt somebody, like their brother wouldn't come after them for vengeance. They could go hide out in the sanctuary. So you had these neutral zones where the priests would be safe because they were supposed to be focused on religious life. They weren't necessarily supposed to be soldiers or politicians or whatever. So you left the Levites out of it. So it's kind of a cool parallel there. But I think what would be really cool is if this is where like you said, like they're growing food, they're making beer, these are like they're sanctuaries, but they're also like kind of stops on the road. They're
Yeah.
right. Like you would have these various different camps, and again, I'm thinking like the Walking Dead TV show where you have these like different towns that eventually set up, and they trade amongst each other. So you'd have these gang-led camps and like little towns or whatever, and they would constantly be at war with each other, but their food and drinks and whatever have to come from somewhere. So you would have these like little neutral towns where it was like a saloon and there's a farmer and there's like a little clinic, and it's like, and anybody who goes there is safe. It's total neutral ground. Like you can have Jets and Sharks and Crips and Bloods all in the same place, and like no one's gonna fight. Like everybody respects it, and it's like that thing where if you fuck with one of the people who like lives there or like runs this town, if you fuck with a Levite, then like that's your ass. That's like going to prison, they find out you're a rapist, like you're fucked.
Yes. Exactly. And it's not just gonna be like a quick death. Like they're gonna fuck with you. So nobody wants that. Like nobody wants to, because you're gonna become a societal outcast and hunted. So it's like one of those things. So yeah, I like this idea of having the different camps, because like, so we have the neutral zones, and then like then we'll have like the wasteland, and in the wasteland, that's where you have the different like gang-led encampments. So like you're gonna have the Crips and the Bloods for just the that, not obviously, but that type of mentality of, you don't come into our section, we won't go into your section. But between them, there's gonna be these neutral zones, and then we could have couriers. So we could have, maybe there's some kind of mark, like they wear like either on the back of their coat there's some kind of symbol painted, like a red cross or something, or like it's some kind of symbol letting people know like that this caravan or this courier, this is taking food to one of your camps. So don't fuck with them, like they're off limits. They don't got that mark on them, or it would have to be something other than a mark, maybe like a brand. Like they could have like a brand on their skin or something.
Yeah, it could be something like that. Like maybe maybe they had these like little flags. Picture like Buddhist like prayer flags, like these little flags that kind of stitch on stuff. They're
Mhm.
miniature, and they have this little symbol on them, and they almost look like they're fringe, not like a big
Yeah.
giant banner. But yeah, to your point, like maybe the leaders of the people who are like lifelong, members of this group, the monks, like maybe they have a brand or a tattoo or something. And it made me think of there's not the Knights Templar, which I think is kind of a famous like formerly Catholic organization, but there's another one called the Knights Hospitaller. The
Mhm.
Hospitallers, which is the same root word as hospital, they
Mhm.
were a Catholic military organization that formed during the Crusades that morphed into like an organization that provided like uh, battleground medical care and food for people who had been put out because of wars, and they took care of the innocent bystanders from these
Yes.
crusades. And their symbol is a it's kind of hard to describe what it looks like. It kind of looks like a iron cross, but it's like pinched in the middle. And
Yeah. No, I know the exact symbol you're talking about.
yeah. So I think if we want to, I think let's just use that for our story. Like we'll call them the Hospitallers. They have this like little like flower looking little symbol, and they wear it on like a black band or like a black armband or something like that.
Yeah.
Or and yeah, I kind of like the black armband idea. And like the leaders have a little brand that they put on like their hand, like on the webbing between like their finger and their thumb. So it's like easily seen. And yeah, anyway, I think it's just a cool little world building detail.
And we can explain this in that opening montage when we're talking about the rise of the neutral zones and like the couriers and all that. We could talk about that armband in particular and basically be like, at first there were those that tried to like kill and take the armband so they could be safe, like, and hide amongst the couriers. But it was they're like, if you do that, like, you're not going to be killed, you're going to be tortured. Like, these, like,
Hmm.
they will find out and you will regret it. So it's like people, like, it became quick knowledge in the wasteland of, do not fuck with the couriers, you won't get away with it. Like, don't fuck with the courier. Now, on the flip side, if like a courier breaks, like, let's say like they have some kind of rule, like if you break the rule of trust and like murder somebody or do something like that, well, then it's free game. Like, now you're out of the order, type of thing. So we could still have at some point like someone, as a courier, do something bad and be like, oh shit, now you're on your own, buddy. That type of a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. You can be sort of ostracized, but yeah, it's not to spend too much time on this. I think it's a really interesting idea, and it's the perfect place for us to find out where Snake is
Yes.
now. Snake Plissken. I think this is the perfect place for him to be in the New World Order. I mean, he set it off by engaging the 666 code that made the
Mhm.
sort of Damocles go worldwide. Like, he wanted this, and I think it
Yep.
would be interesting when we meet him. And I'm not sure like what the order of events is in terms of like how the movie opens, but we should find out that you mentioned courier, right? There's these like couriers and merchants that travel from gang camp to gang camp, and they deliver food and supplies and beer and different things that they would get from these hospitaller like Levite towns. And there's this one guy who wears a gas mask or something to cover his face because fucking everybody recognizes Snake Plissken everywhere he goes.
Yep. Well, yeah, and of course he would have to be like, he would be one of the couriers because he's just trying to live his life. But we need to set up our bad guy here in this opening so we can just kind of like get right into the movie, very much like how Escape from New York and Escape from LA did. Now, I know Escape from New York, we didn't really find out about the Duke of New York until Snake was going in, but they did talk about like basically a leader in New York, like how
Hmm.
the people have come together. And we find out about Cuervo right away in the opening of Escape from LA. And it was Cuervo Jones. It took me a minute, but Cuervo Jones, that was his name.
Okay.
So we should have this. We should figure this out. So let's have the villain that I'm picturing, and I, we can, people can make their own connections. A sniveling little, waste of a person. So like some kind of like, just crappy little like Weasley guy who is working with the working with like the neutral zone, like the monks. He's not a monk, he's just working with them. So maybe he's a courier, and one of his things is like he finds a like an abandoned government facility, like maybe some kind of bunker. And in that, but like maybe this is like the one like place that was shielded from the sword of Damocles. Like, so there's some power still. Like maybe there's like a battery drain. I don't know how much we want to go into it. Like how, like if there's so many years left of the generator or whatever. But I think we should set up here like the like what the crux of our movie is going to be. So we talked a little bit about this beforehand, like, cause you know, the idea of like, why are they escaping from Earth? So what I'm thinking here is this guy finds a like a giant spaceship or spaceships, something, you know, that where it's like Project Exodus, like there was always a plan to leave Earth. Okay. And that like there should be some reason. So like let's say like we knew that Carpenter wanted to do Escape from Mars. Like, well, why would people be on Mars? Like what, like, and this is an ongoing sci-fi trope we see again and again. Total Recall, you know, Ghosts of Mars. Like, yeah, people always talk about like Mars. So and like terraforming Mars. That's always been a concept, even today in you know in science fiction. So like let's have a what is that vault in the Arctic called? You know what I'm talking about? Like the vault that has all the seeds of mankind.
Oh gosh, yeah, I can't remember what that's called, but you're right. It's
like a vault.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, you're talking about this vault where there is like a stockpile of seeds and cuttings from different types of plants, so that if there were to be some sort of like catastrophic event, whether it was like a war or even like a huge plague or something that would affect plant life, we have these heirloom seeds from these plants so that they could be like regrown or cloned. And you know, it's like we're filing them away for the future.
Yes, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. Like this was the idea for this. So something, and in my head, I was just calling it the Genesis sphere. So like have it like be this big orb, because again, you know, it's the weird sci-fi technology. We already saw a lot of it in Escape from LA and Escape from New York. The weird, you know, don't explain it, it's movie sci-fi type of thing. So it's this big orb. Let's say it has like all of the necessary DNA for like every plant and, you know, animal on Earth. So and then there's a means of terraforming Mars. So like there's this whole Project Exodus where it's like there's a way to start over, there's a way to like, you know, create Earth 2 basically. But because it was the evil fucking government that was doing this, of course there's also going to be a plan to wipe out whatever's left, the remnant on Earth. So, and considering we already saw the propensity of using biological weapons in the last movie, let's have it be a virus. Because I know Carpenter talked about, in one of the many interviews I saw where he talked about this, there was, I know one of the versions of the script, there was going to be a zombie outbreak, but of course, you know, zombie outbreaks happened all across the early 2000s in movies. But at the time this was being talked about, zombies were a hot button, but they weren't overused. So it was like, they became overused, but so what if we do something similar to like the 28 Days Later type of virus, where it's like a rage virus, but in this thing, whatever this virus is, it attacks your vital organs, attacks your brain. You're stuck with only lower brain function, so all of your higher brain functions are gone. You just become like this drooling, barbaric monstrosity that is driven by nothing more than to spread the virus in the time you have left. And like maybe like once the virus runs its course, you're dead, much like they talked about in part 2, where it's like you bleed out like a stuck pig, that whole idea. Like maybe it fucking liquefies your insides and you're gone. So you have only so much time to infect, and the virus is driven to do that. So fuck it, the infinity virus, that sounds nice and sci-fi enough. Plus it goes on infinitely. So yeah, so imagine like somebody getting infected, and we could even see this like play out in like a little, like maybe this character watches a little video presentation in the bunker, and it's just like a little cartoony thing of like the infinity virus will spread nonstop, and show these creatures like attacking and spreading it to the next host, and then it's spreading to the next host, and so on and so forth. And there's no cure, all that. It's literally a doomsday weapon. Like it's just kill everything, like scorched earth protocol. So now this little Weasley bastard has this information. He knows where it is. He knows about the rocket ship. He's going to somehow use that to leverage power. Now,
Okay.
I love the idea of when we open the movie having a new world order. Like we see all the thing of like the fall of society, the rise of like small encamps and gang law, and then eventually somebody is going to wrest power away from the strong because they're just a charismatic asshole who somehow convinces other people to work for him. And he's going to basically become the new king, like President King, you know. So I love the idea of it being in Vegas, and I know we've seen that in The Stand with Randall Flagg, you know, has his kingdom in Vegas. So I'm kind of running that parallel again, keeping the religious parallels going. So the idea of like the Caesar Hotel.
Like Caesar's Palace.
Yeah, he can call himself like President Caesar or something like that.
Oh, wait, King Caesar.
King Caesar, yeah, exactly.
That sounds so stupid.
I love it, King Caesar. President King Caesar.
Oh God, President King Caesar. That's perfect.
Oh my God. So,
okay.
Yeah, so he's the, like, when we start the movie, he's the big bad, is the new president.
Yeah. Okay. So President King Caesar, he's set up in Vegas. Now, I like this idea that, again, since we're sort of like telling the audience in this crawl, like this is what happened in the aftermath of sort of Damocles, like, you know, gang violence and the breakout of the Infinity virus and like the establishment of the like hospitaller, like neutral zones. And, you know, we kind of do all this. I like this idea of this Exodus spaceship or something. There was some means like you know, all the rich fucks of the world got together with like the, you know, the president for life of the US, and they built this like escape method. And by the way, I looked it up. It's called the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, and it's on an island in the Arctic Ocean.
There it is.
Yeah. So yeah, wait, I like.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but you're talking about Exodus, and you had mentioned earlier, we're talking about the Levites and the whole 12 tribes of Israel thing. What if, again, just keep the biblical themes running here, what if the ship had enough cryopods for 1,200 people?
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, that's good. That's a good number, right? So it's like, you know, that probably adds up to all like the billionaires and politicians.
Yeah. You know? and there's enough there that they could start a small society before they'd have to inbreed too quickly.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So, but you know what? Let's hang on to that aspect of it. Like, I don't know that we want to reveal that immediately in the crawl. Like, let's just have it that for some reason, like there, like this one, you know, gang warlord has risen above all others and established his kingdom in Las Vegas. You know, President King Caesar.
Well, yeah, so I like that. We'll hold on to the whole Exodus thing. We'll just talk about the Infinity virus, like that he found this biological weapon, and maybe it was something as simple as like, you know, it's these little vials in like a gun. Like he can literally shoot somebody and they'll become infected and then they'll go on. So maybe like we see early on, like he takes the little gun, like a picture like a tranquilizer gun. So he takes that, you know, on his way out of the bunker. Maybe he gets, you know, I don't know, maybe he gets attacked. Maybe he's not officially one of the hospitalers. Maybe he's just working with them, or trying to work with them, something like that. But have him accidentally infect somebody, and just it cause complete devastation. Maybe it completely wipes out one of the gang encampments.
Okay,
and
nice.
It terrifies people. People are like, how the fuck did he, like, he gets this reputation of he killed, like, you know, whatever, you know, we'll figure out some gang, like the Cobras, like he killed the entire gang. So then we find out, like, he has a means of creating these like fucking zombies, and if you go against him, he'll do it to you. You know, so now it's like there's that fear of President King Caesar. I
Yeah,
love
so-
that he's called President King Caesar.
That's so stupid. And of course, like, I'm thinking he's in Vegas, and President King Caesar, like the type of person that I'm picturing is the kind of guy who would very much want to set himself up as like, a Roman emperor type, but in the worst way. The guy who, he definitely would want to be, surrounded by scantily clad ladies on like a throne overlooking like gladiator fights. Like,
and he would have like this massively oversized throne, so he'd look like a little kid sitting in his dad's chair.
Yeah, exactly. With like a big, like, comically huge crown that keeps trying to fall off of his head. Like,
Yes.
why are you
Like
wearing that?
Like he took it off a statue or something.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like surrounded by like thugs, bodyguards or whatever. But yeah, and there's got to be like these. And I know we've done like gladiator games before in our like Street Fighter episode, in our Joust episode. But whatever, because to me it seems like it makes sense here. Like I'm picturing like what's his name, the guy that was the Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator the movie. Where it's like,
Yeah.
of course, his favorite thing is watching like people like fight to death in the octagon.
Well, and plus we saw that with the Duke in Escape from New York. He did that with Snake. He put him, in the ring, and it was a gladiator combat. And then we see with Cuervo, like, yeah, it's a basketball thing again, quintessentially 90s. But we also see the dudes like killing other people there between the basketball games. There was like the gladiator with the giant shears who like chopped the guy's head off for no fucking reason. Like, oh, you're in here,
Yeah.
So, and again, it's that parallel of the other two movies. Like, of course, there's going to be gladiator combat.
Yeah. And so let's do this. Let's we need to draw a connection between somebody who is close to President King Caesar and then somehow getting Snake into the story, which is like a connection to Snake as this like hospitaller courier who like comes to Vegas with like a delivery of beer and food or whatever. So in order to put these two together, we don't have a president to like put Snake on like a secret black ops mission. So we need to sort of organically get him into the story so that he has an opportunity to be a hero, right? So let's have, one of Caesar's confidants or one of the gladiator fighters or somebody, right? Somebody close to him that we can kind of focus on, at least at the beginning. Somebody who like maybe isn't 100% down with, President King Caesar and, would have a reason to want to leave to go meet Snake or I don't know, something.
Okay, all right. No, I like the idea of it being a gladiator, and immediately I'm thinking of the Mad Max like reboot. How it's like it was a Mad Max movie, but it really was a story about Furiosa. But like it was in the world of Mad Max. So let's do something like that. So one of the gladiators, I'm picturing like a Gina Carano type, like big, strong woman. Not obviously Gina Carano, but someone of that, like a picture American Gladiator, like
definitely, yeah,
like that type of body build. But like this big bruiser of a gladiator who's just like wiping fucking dudes out, just owning that gladiator pits, and like of course winning the favor of President King Caesar. And she's gonna get all the best. Like she's gonna get as much booze as she wants. She's gonna get as much food as she wants. She's gonna get as much company as she wants. That type of thing. So maybe I don't know if she's gonna overhear, or maybe he's gonna try to like take her in and be like, look, you've proven yourself again and again. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. And maybe this is where we find out about Project Exodus. We find out about the fact that he has a means of escaping this, and there is a plan to eventually leave all of this behind and start over. But would he actually want that? Would he want to start over, or would he be happy there? I mean, for the sake of the story, I think that he should want to get out of there. Maybe he knows they're going to run out of food eventually, or something. Like there's some kind of like reason.
Oh. No, I think the Infinity Virus is our reason. He's not really in control. I think that's the secret. The secret should
perfect.
So he's got an escape plan, like a back door, and he hasn't used it yet because he hasn't needed to, but it's there, right? So a couple of things just went off. A couple of light bulbs just went off. Let's have it so that I'm sorry. Did you give this woman a name? Did we name her and I missed it?
Let's call her Dallas. I don't know why I like the name Dallas for her.
Okay. So, yeah, that's not that's oddly fitting for reasons I can't explain. Yeah, so Dallas. Okay, so Dallas is, yeah, she's partying with like the people in Caesar's like inner circle, like his bodyguards and his hangers on and his yes men and his scantily clad ladies, and
Right.
and she's just enjoying everything. Dallas is enjoying the food and the booze and the girls and the guys or whatever, just enjoying everything. And maybe she like makes a comment like, the hospitalers are bringing deliveries all the time, but man, like you guys have so much food. It's like there's no way that you have this much. Like it must be good to be king or something. And she kind of makes a comment, and I feel like President King Caesar would be the kind of person who would just like want to show off. He'd want to brag,
course.
right? So he
Of
would be
course.
like, well, yeah, it's good to be king. Like, let me show you something. And he whatever he says, he's kind of like crooks his finger at her, like, check this out. And he like takes her down an elevator into this like storage facility, like in the bottom of the hotel or nearby or whatever. And he flips on the light switch, and you get that thing where you hear this like kunk 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 of these lights coming on. It's this giant warehouse, and it's just stocked full of food and liquor and kegs of beer and medical supplies. It's like years and years worth of supplies for people that he's clearly been like keeping all the good shit for himself and just doling out like whatever's left over to like the common folk in Vegas. But maybe there's a lot of people there and like nobody really noticed, because when there's a lot of people fighting over resources, maybe you don't. And of course, the people at the top of the pyramid are going to take a little extra, but nobody realized that he was just stockpiling it. And he sort of explains that like, oh well, we've got food and drink to last us for years, and whatever, maybe she's asking questions, whatever this conversation is, he basically, he goes from wanting to just kind of brag about how much food he has to like, well, the real secret is check this out. And he brings it up on like some kind of like video monitor that there's these like ICBM like missile silos with like, these Exodus ships ready to take his 1,200 people off to somewhere off planet. And he's basically saying like, if anything ever goes wrong with the Infinity virus, don't worry, honey, you're with me now. Like, you don't have to worry about getting infected, because we're going to get the fuck out of Dodge before it's too late.
Okay, so one of the things we need to address is because the lack of technology from the Sword of Damocles, like we would have to have created
you're right.
some form of way to like refrigerate things, to have some kind of technology. So we could explain this in the opening crawl. We could explain that like years after the fall, the smartest, the smartest among us, were able to figure out a means to create generators again, maybe like using some form of like, homebrewed alcohol as fuel. So it's like they have generators for like modest refrigeration and like, some, so like they were able to bring some computers back online and stuff like that. But because Caesar found that government bunker, maybe he built, like maybe it was in Vegas that the bunker exists, and like he built his little kingdom atop it. So when they go down, like, yeah, he does have access to power, he does have access to technology, like, he's one of the few that has the access. And so she's like not only amazed by the amount of food and supplies, but the fact that holy shit, you have electricity, you have fucking refrigeration, like this is the stuff people talked about for years. Like, what are you talking? How is this here? That type of thing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I like the idea of the Infinity virus being the reason, because again, this falls into the character perfectly. So he wrests power accidentally by shooting one of the gang members early on and infecting them, and then that infected goes back to their camp and they wipe out everybody. So like he becomes known as this super powerful person by an accident that is now running rampant across the wasteland in pocket communities. Like the virus is still out there spreading. So that's our ticking clock, like you said, the virus.
Yeah.
So, but again, people believe he's in control, and in reality, he's trying to get the fuck out of Dodge because he knows he can't stop it.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Oh, that makes perfect sense. That's so good. And we can. I don't know if we want to go so far as to have him be like really evil, but like, how fucked up would it be if we find out that all the people who lose in the gladiator fights, they're all fucking strapped to like these giant like turbines, like Conan, turning the grindstone at the mill, right? Where he's
Oh,
turned all these people into like slaves, like basically like making power for him.
they're running the generator, kind of like the Flash in was it Dark Knight,
Oh
where
yeah,
he was
yeah.
in that like gyro and he was spinning around, running at the super speed, keeping the power going.
Yeah. Oh, and maybe he's like, watch this, and he like fucking shoots one of these like slaves who's like chained to this big like turbine, turning it around. He shoots him with a infinity virus dart, and the guy like hulks out, and it just like roar, and like pushes it around and around and around and around, and it's like and it's creating this like little power surge, and that they're storing in like batteries he found in the silo or whatever, and it's like fuck. Not only do you not have control over this virus, but you're just using it to like
Oh,
power your refrigerator for your fucking champagne. Like what the hell,
ooh, I like that a lot. So yeah, dude, we could set up the grindstone thing that you were talking about. What if they're like each section? It's caged off, so the person can't escape. They're just like stuck in this little like almost like a picture like a Flintstones car where their feet stick out the bottom.
Yeah.
But it's like this little cage, but it's got the bars around it, and he's literally like any loser he would infect. So they'd run the course of the virus trapped in that cell, unable to like break out and infect anybody else, but they're pushing the wheel harder. So it's like every couple of days he has to replace them. So he's literally using the virus recklessly for his
Mhm.
own gain, but like that's like a horrible fate. Like you're turned into this mindless, rage-filled creature, and you're just rushing to your death for the next like 48 hours. But
Yeah.
Caesar gets his cold champagne.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
It's like,
it's fucked up, right? And like
yeah,
the Infinity Virus should have some kind of a physical sign, like we mentioned before, like with the Hospitallers. It should be like that their skin gets all cracked, or like you see like their veins turn all black, or something where you would immediately recognize that somebody is infected, right? Not necessarily
I,
because they're all hooked out.
I like both ideas. Like the immediate reaction to the Infinity Virus should be two things: the darkening of the veins all across the body as the virus travels through their system, maybe like reddening or blackening around the eyes, like they get that sunken like almost skull look to them.
Hmm.
But I like the idea of, you said, hulking out. So imagine if like as the virus pumps through their blood, it forces the muscle, like it forces rapid muscle growth. So
Hmm.
like the kind of
Yeah.
like the Hulk, but
Hmm.
it splits their skin, kind of like the Harlequin disease.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like their skin gets like calcified and begins breaking apart. So they look like the Thing, not John Carpenter's The Thing, but Fantastic Four The Thing.
Yeah.
So they got like and like the ripped, torn like crags between their skin, like not completely covering their body, but like all over parts of their body. So there's no mistaking someone who is inflicted with the Infinity Virus. Like it's immediately visible on their body.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason that's perfect. I love that. The reason I mentioned it is, um, does he have some kind of like a vaccine or a cure, do you think? Is it just completely out of control with the the reason I mentioned is like maybe we see that there are people that he's got some evil scientists, kind of like Bruce Campbell's like Surgeon General character from
Yeah.
Escape from LA, and they're like doing experiments on people who clearly have the virus, who are like strapped down to tables, and it's like maybe he mentions that, like, or Dallas asks, like, what's up with these people being tortured or whatever in like hospital beds, and he's like, oh, like, well, one of these days, like, we'll find the cure, um,
Oh, I like that. Okay, yeah, yeah. So in reality, the reason he's doing that is because he knows it's running rampant, and
mhm.
maybe like we got to figure out the thing with the Exodus. Like, is it a matter of they have to stockpile enough fuel? They have to. There's a reason why he hasn't left yet. Maybe it is because he's enjoying himself. Who knows? But he's also looking for a possible cure because he knows he can't control it, even though he's convinced everyone he can. So yeah, I like this idea, almost like the fucking Surgeon General, like you said, operating on these people. We could see it would be like Frankenstein in Day of the Dead, where you
Mhm.
go into the like the lab and you just see fucking corpses piled against the wall, like body bags just everywhere, and like a handful of people strapped down to beds, like, you know, foaming at the mouth, and like how they got like
Mhm.
electrodes in their head and shit. And those are the ones that are still being studied, and we see all of these other ones that have died already. So maybe it's like they run the wheel, and before they die, they're dragged into the lab to let, you know, fucking Surgeon General experiment on them and try to find a cure. Um, and we should have, like, maybe there's a few people who have survived past, you know, like, let's say it's like, you know, I don't want to say maybe 48 hours. Let's say it's the virus burns through your body in a week. You know, so
Yeah. Mhm.
they've lived past their week, you know. Like there's a couple of them, but they're like almost like the half corpse in Return of the Living Dead. They're like, "Rawr," you know, like, kill me, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so we could see that there are people, like, it's not a definite right away death sentence, and some of them it's worse for, because that, like, the virus, maybe the swelling goes down and now their skin's all craggy and ripped and, you know, nasty looking, and they're just like in constant agony.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So they, and I think the answer to the question as to why it hasn't left yet is hubris. It should be that, like, he knew when he broke into that silo, he was like, I found, you know, fuel, batteries, everything. There was, like, you know, fucking instructions all laid out, like somebody wrote a really great instruction manual, but like there was no food in the hold. So I knew I had to, you know, get some food together, but, you know, it's so hard to, you know, hoard food around here because, you know, of this peaceful relationship that they have with the hospitalers. You know, so he basically used his position of power initially to hoard food for himself as like the leader of a gang, but then, you know, he was just really enjoying himself. You know,
Right.
you know, being the president king of Vegas was just a lot of fun. So like, why leave? Like, he doesn't know where he's going. He should say that. Like, he doesn't know. The one thing that was missing from this manual was, I have the coordinates, but I don't know where this is going. Like, you know, like, who knows
Oh
what's out
yeah.
there? You know, who
and
knows
and
what's.
and how long we'll be in stasis for, like, because again,
Yeah.
they're going to be in cryostasis. Like, maybe it's just as simple as they punch the coordinates in, they get in cryostasis, and it's going to autopilot them to wherever that is.
Yeah, exactly. But like, while they're in autostasis, they got to have some kind of food that they're, you know, eating through tubes or whatever, or just, you know, food to eat when they get wherever they're going, you know, that kind of
Right.
thing. Um, yeah. So back to the Infinity virus people, like, there should be this one guy who's like, you know, chained up on a wall or a bed or something. He's got like a million fucking needles all sticking out of him. He's like in the middle of the room. He's like, you know, the star of the show with like the Surgeon General guy there. And of course, you know, Dallas is going to be like, well, like, what's up with this guy? Like, why is he over here, you know, all by himself, all hooked up to all this shit, whatever. And the explanation is just that, like, oh, well, you know, this is Dave or whatever. Like, you know,
Let's call him Canker.
there you go, right? He's like, this is Kanker, you know, he's the star of the show. He's somehow managed to survive the Infinity virus infection for a whole year, you know, and Dallas is like, oh my
Oh.
God. And it was like, you know, and you know, the Surgeon General here is trying to, you know, understand, you know, how he survived so long, because we think that there's a cure, you know, and one of these days we're gonna figure it out, and we just gotta keep on trying.
And Kanker, I'm picturing, like, remember the opening to Return of the Living Dead 3 with the, like, the creepy zombie that they bring back, the big naked homeless guy.
Okay,
like
yeah.
like picture like an emaciated, like, but his skin is all scarred and pockmarked from like when it ripped apart when he hulked out, and like his veins are still black, and is like he's got like no hair, almost like fucking Gollum from Lord of the Rings, just like hanging there, just like, you know, moaning in agony as they're like pumping him full of different drugs and like taking his blood, and just like, this poor freaking guy. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, and the reason I mentioned this guy is because I feel like Dallas is. I don't think that she's just going to immediately be like, oh no, I have to like help people or whatever. Like, this guy's
Oh no.
evil. But I think that there needs to be something to push her over the edge. That's why I was like, are there like slaves or like whatever? And I think what I wanted with this one survivor is something for her to finally be like, okay, this is too much. Like, I can't like work for this guy. I can't be on this guy's like inner circle. Like all this food and drink and girls and stuff is great, but this guy is fucking whacked, and I can't be a part of this. And maybe she just immediately thinks like, I got to get this canker guy out of here. It's like the dude that was the sloth victim from Seven, right? Where he's
Oh
just
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
strapped to that bed for a whole year, and it's just horrific. So I think that that's what it is that she wants to rescue Canker. She's immediately going to be like, fuck this, I got to get this guy out of here. And so she's going to like, give up what the good thing that she has going for her in Vegas, because, after that, the party that night, and, she's all, leading President King Caesar on that she's totally fine with everything that she's shown him. This is all awesome stuff. Can't wait for that ride to space, boss. But then, later on, we're going to see her like, laying in bed, can't sleep, and she's going to get up and like sneak back down to the lab to try to get this guy out of there.
Maybe it's something I'm sure, well, I don't know. He doesn't want to be like I was going to say, have him be like, kill me, that type of thing. But I don't want him to do that, because obviously she would, and then she would be on the run. Or
Yeah.
maybe that's it.
Or maybe you mentioned this whole thing we talked earlier about, like the Hospitallers having like a symbol or something. Maybe she sees he's got that fucking Hospitaller star like tattooed on his hand, and they've got this guy like strapped up and being experimented on. So not only is it real fucked up, but President King Caesar and all his cronies are breaking like the cardinal rule of this whole new society by fucking with this guy.
Oh, I like that. Oh, okay. What? Oh, dude. Okay. Oh, no. Okay, I got it. I like this. Okay. So when the first encampment fell to the Infinity Virus, the nearby Hospitallers camp is going to come under attack from the Infinity Virus, because these things are fucking zombies. They're not following no rules.
Yep.
So there could be like rumor of a camp that fell. A Hospitallers camp that fell to something. And then of course, it's going to be rumors across the wasteland that there are these creatures out there, that they're not human. They used to be human, but they're not human anymore. And if they touch you, you die. Like, of course it's going to, the rumors will get out of control. But yeah, what if it's like one of the lead Hospitallers from that camp? He survived the virus and then was captured by President King Caesar's men when they did like a sweep through to like clean up the corpses of all the virus, the people who died from the virus a week later. And they find him like still living in his tent, but like all scarred, and he's not quite brain dead, but he's not all there anymore. Like it definitely attacked him, and they kidnap him and bring him in, but he has that brand. Maybe this could be one of those things where people knew of the story of this camp. It was the first Hospitaller camp to ever be taken down by anything. And people like there's the rumor of it was monsters. Some people believe like it's some kind of errant gang that no one really knows about. Like there's some gang out there that did this, but nobody knows the real reason and it's like just it's legend in the wasteland, or rumor. And so this Dallas, she sees that symbol on his hand, remembers the stories, and she can't stop thinking about it. So now she's stuck being like, he's one of them. He's from the fallen camp. Like how did they get him? How did Caesar get him? Like that whole thing. So now she wants to talk to him. And maybe, she, when she gets down there, he's like, he's begging her to free him. And she does, yeah. And that's when she gets outed, and now she and Canker have to escape Vegas to get the fuck away from Caesar and his people.
Okay, nice. Okay, so perfect, right? So should she be able to get him out of there by herself, do we think? Or does she need help? Is there somebody else?
There's another character I've been wanting to introduce, because I can't stop thinking about the character of Cabby. I love Cabby in the first Escape from New York. There's also a character that I absolutely love. I talked about this in the Boogeyman's Closet. It's one of my favorite nonsensical side characters in a movie, and that is the random preacher in Halloween 4. And I want to have like this crazy, like I'm picturing like a just like an old black man with like a big white beard, and like he's got the tiny little black sunglasses and like a big brimmed hat, and he's like this crazed preacher, but he's a courier. So he's, but
Okay.
because he's a courier, he's got fucking guns. So he's a gunslinger. So I picture like this crazy preacher gunslinger, and I want to name him Church. So he's just like, so he'll be coming into town, singing hymns and stuff, just all happy as can be, doesn't have a care in the world. And I feel like that this is where a good point to introduce him. So maybe we have Dallas. So we do everything you said with President. She plays along. She goes back to her quarters. She can't stop thinking about it. We keep doing the flashbacks of like seeing that symbol on his hand, seeing, the Hospitaller symbol. And it's like she just can't get it out of her head. So under the cover of darkness, she goes down into the underground, finds her way to the lab. Maybe she like sneaks past one of the guards, or sneaks past the whoever the Surgeon General character is. She sneaks past him and finds her way into the lab, talking to him. And we find out like he's clearly like he has trouble speaking. Like a lot of his functions are fucked. So when she talks to Kanker, like he's trying to tell her get me out of here. Like people need to know. Like, he's like trying to warn her like there is no cure. Like I'm a freak. I'm not, I'm one of a kind. Like there's no cure. Don't let him do this to other people. So like she gets him and like, breaks him out. But as soon as she unhooks him, maybe like some fucking, alarm sounds or it trips some kind of bell. So now it's like, oh shit, the guards are coming. So it's, President's stormtroopers are basically coming after Dallas and Kanker, and they have to like fight their way out. They get out into the proper town around the Capitol. And, they're like mixing in amongst the people, and maybe that's where they run into Church. So Church has got his little caravan. He's handing out the supplies that he's bringing from the next encampment. And they're like, you're a Hospitaller. And he's like, I sure am. They're just like, you need to get us out of here. He's like, all right, say no more. Hop in. Gets him in the back of in the little carriage that he's, riding along on, and starts making his way out of town. So they kind of escape with a Hospitaller.
Okay. Yeah. I love this. I love this character. This guy sounds really fun. So let's do this. I want to retroactively go back to the beginning and insert a scene because I love all this stuff that we've come up with, but we haven't really had a chance to do anything with Snake yet. Yes. And I think that makes sense because, we talked about having Snake be one of these like Hospitaller courier guys, and like, we'll get to him, but we need to get him at least on the table, like on the screen, before we cut away to focus on Dallas for a while. So what if we, after the opening crawl credits explanation thing, like, we focus in on, let's meet Church here. Like, he's the first character we meet, and he's just like singing, and he's like riding his, he's got like a mule and a wagon or whatever. Like he's just, singing like a country preacher, going into town. And he gets up to the gates or gets close to Vegas, and you see maybe there's like some gang members who come out, and they're going to try and give him a hard time. And some guy goes up to like reach up and grab his like little coin purse, and then you see Church just like you hear that cock, and he pulls out a gun and puts up against this guy's head like don't try it, son, like or whatever. And then we kind of learned this because someone else in the gang will be like like, Tito, what the fuck you doing, bro? That's Hospitaller, man. We don't mess with them. What are you, like, born yesterday, like, idiot?
Right.
And then
I like. Oh, sorry. Real quick, I was gonna say that just a little bit of world building. His little carriage should be like part of an old car. Like, so it'll be like nice. Picture like a car with like half of it, like just the chassis, and like a little hooded wagon on top of that.
Yes, that's awesome.
but I like the idea when the guy goes to grab him, like, and he puts his gun to have him be like, "Hope you said your prayers today, son." Something like.
Yes, exactly. And then like after the little Tito gets like scolded by the other guy, have Church be like, "Oh, no harm done. It sure is a hot day. I think the heat's just all going to our heads." And he like throws his like cloak back to put the gun away, but when he throws his cloak back, you see it's just all lined with like pistols and knives and swords and shit. He's just like like he was showing like, that shit off,
2 bandoliers filled with bullets and like guns all around his way. So he's got like all of these different like holsters are all around his belt. So it's not just a gun on each hip. It's a gun in front of his crotch, a gun in front of his thighs, a gun on his hips, a gun on his butt. And then he's got like a big old boomstick in his back.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, it sure is a hot day. Like the heat makes people do crazy things,
Yes.
It's like,
all the while just flashing his teeth, like big old smile.
exactly.
I love
Got-
it.
He's got like one gold tooth that like catches the sun, and
Oh man,
um,
I want to draw this guy. He's fun.
yeah. But then like right after this, you hear like a voice, say something like, I don't know what he says, but you hear Snake say something like, hey church, be careful in town, like, this isn't the only, this isn't the only gang member, who's riled up today, like they got like, fights going on, and like everyone's got their blood boiling or something like you see this mysterious figure in like a gas mask say something, names the character for us, like, hey church, be careful in there today. Again, a little bit of world building in the expositional dialogue, and then you see Church go into town, and the other guy with the gas mask is like leaving town, and after he gets far enough away where it's safe, he takes his mask off, and you see that it's Snake,
Yep.
and maybe he it's that tried and true old trope of like he's talking to his horse or something, whatever, just so we have a little bit of chance for him to like talk and introduce himself or like what he's doing, or we just see him go back to the hospitaller town and meet up with the monk who's in charge, and he's delivering this or that, and maybe whatever, just I don't know what it is. I'm just saying, like, this is where we introduce Snake. Okay, cool. He's a courier. He's on the road. He's going out to this little town that's nearby. We kind of get the geography. We see Church, and then we cut back to Church, like going into Vegas. The camera pans away from him over to like the gladiator fights, and then President King Caesar, and there's Dallas like beating the shit out of somebody, and then we just go on with the whole rest of the story, like we just said, and
Okay.
then when Dallas and Kanker like are busting out, they get to a point where they're just about home free, and then like, oh holy shit, like they're surrounded by President King Caesar's like soldiers are moving in or whatever, and then you just see I don't know what the dialogue is, but I'm just picturing like Church just like just jumping into the middle of the street, like somehow he's got 8 guns out even though he only has 2 arms, like he's got them on like little levers or whatever, like they're all like
Oh,
he's got a gun on the end of like one of those like extendable like accordion arms,
yeah,
somehow.
dude. Yeah, I'm picturing. Okay, so I'm picturing like he pulls. So he's got these like picture like big like almost I don't want to say leather gauntlets, but kind of like a leather gauntlet, but like a big bulky gauntlet on both forearms, and then like when he draws his guns, little fucking derringers pop out of the gauntlets, like almost like a Gatling gun around it. So, but it's made up of like little mini pistols. He's got like 2 big fucking revolvers, and then all these little mini pistols popping out of his arms.
Yes, exactly. And like I don't know what the dialogue is again. It's hard for me to like ad lib it, but some kind of like cheerful Bible verses, about protecting your family, or like the Lord blesses those who help themselves, or I don't know, something. And
Right.
some kind of like snappy, cheerful religious dialogue, and then you see Dallas pull Kanker like into the back of Church's like little cart, and they didn't say nothing. It's just Church jumped out to like help him. Dallas like took the opportunity to hop in, and then you hear one of the guards say like, "Don't get in the way here, hospitaller scum," or whatever. Like, this is President King Caesar business. And then you just hear somehow Church pulls out even more guns and is like, "Oh no, sir!" Like like whatever. Like this is only God can judge us. Like these people are going back to sanctuary, or so again something where he basically claims them. Like, "Oh no, they're in my cart now. Like they're mine. I'm a hospitaller. Don't fucking touch me." And
Okay.
they're gonna back out of town and get him to safety.
Okay, you gave me an idea. So again, I hate to rewind again, but we'll go back to the part where you're talking about where we introduce Snake. Let's have that not be at Vegas. Let's have that be at like there's a gang town that's like that he has to go through to get to
Okay.
Vegas. So it's almost like a checkpoint before Vegas. So we see him coming in. We have that whole back and forth, like you said, with the one guy messing with him, and then be like, dude, that's a hospitaller. Like, what the fuck? Are you born yesterday? That whole thing. Have Church be like, oh, no harm, no foul. The heat makes us all do crazy things. He's putting his guns away, type of thing. Well, here we could have them be like, what are you doing in town, hospitaller? And he's just like, oh, no, I'm just dropping somebody off. He's like, courier and cab service. Like, he is the new cabbie. So we
Oh,
have
nice.
that's
Yeah.
why his wagon is a car. I didn't even think of that. It's just serendipitous. out of the back of the wagon, we have the guy in the gas mask get out, and like maybe he gives Church like a coin or something. He's like, be careful, Church. They have the gladiator combat today. He goes, or maybe like, be careful, Church. I know you're going into Vegas. The gladiator fights are today. People are going to be riled. Something like that. So we get the name of the church, or we get the name of church. We see the guy, the courier with the gas mask, walk into town, and maybe he's delivering, goods. And he's going to, stay there for the evening because, again, he's a courier. Like, the gangs are going to provide some kind of, like, downtime for these guys who are bringing them their booze and their food. So he drops off this big satchel of, like, booze. The gang leader, points him to a tent. He walks into the tent, closes the flap. And then we get the reveal. He pulls off the gas mask. And he just kind of like sighs and lights a cigarette, It's just like, so it's like, oh shit, that was Snake, And
Nice.
then we do the thing where he goes into town. So now it's going to make sense when Dallas and Kanker jump into the back of his wagon. They're now his cab fare. Like, hey,
Nice.
that's
Yep.
part of my job. I take people from town to town, and I take food from person to person. Like, that could be like his whole spiel, and have him, hop on, the back of his mule or in the front of the wagon, and kind of like have his gun pointing back. Maybe there's like a big gun sticking off the back of the cab, and have him just be like, now you don't bother us, we won't bother you. Remember the rule, and he's kind of driving away. And that's how Dallas and Kanker get out of town, is by taking Church's cab service.
Nice. I love it.
I knew we'd get there. I knew we had to figure it out, but
yeah. Well, it was a lot to set up too. We had to kind of figure all this stuff out. It's a lot to kind of piece together. So let's just like take a step back. Like, let's zoom out of the story here for a second and just think about like what are we doing? Like, where are we going? So we've got Dallas and Kanker and Church now heading out of Vegas. I'm assuming they got to hook up with Snake. So it could be at one of the Hospitaller, like, or the Hospitaller settlement that's nearby, the one that Church came from before. And, we could maybe have like the monk there. Could be another character that we kind of introduce, like the guy who's like the abbot or whatever, the guy who's in charge. And I guess the question at this point is, since this is an escape movie, is how do we get Snake engaged? He needs to be involved in the story. So we don't have a mission for him at the beginning like we had the first two. We've introduced him and then kind of set him aside for a second to go through the story of introducing Dallas and like, her whole desire to take down President King Caesar. I can immediately see her being the type of person who's like, look, I took this step to rescue Kanker. There's so much more shit going on in there. We need to like go back to Vegas and like help all these people. The Hospitallers can't do that. They don't want anything to do with it. So somehow Snake has to be that person. But there's two problems. One, he is a Hospitaller, and two, he's wearing this gas mask all the time. So there's no guarantee that anybody like knows who he is. If somebody were to recognize him, maybe they'd be like, Snake, like, come on, man. Like, I know everybody knows your past. Like, this is right up your alley, like a rescue mission. But we're not just rescuing, the president. Now we're going to rescue like a whole bunch of people from, this trumped up emperor. But I don't know how we connect to that part yet.
So so what I'm thinking is like, so Church, Dallas, and Kanker are leaving Vegas on their way back to the neutral zone. And they got to head through that gang territory of the gang that already threatened Church, and where we know that Snake is, where he's at that town already. So he's heading back there. What if we have President King Caesar, like, I don't know, maybe send out a goon squad, or like, I mean, there's no like electricity, so he can't really call anybody. So so he would send out like a goon squad to try to hunt him down. And like, it's going to be in gang territory, so it's not neutral zone. So they can fight. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, hey, we're picking a fight. The rule of law is there is no rule of law, So he sends out a goon squad after him, and like, that's the rule he's breaking, is that his little goon squad is attacking a Hospitaller. So then the gangs are going to be like, yo, what the fuck? And like, they're going to start fighting back. So now there's going to be a whole shitload of fighting happening. Church, Dallas, and Kanker are trying to get to cover. Snake is obviously going to hear all the kerfuffle and be like, what the fuck, come out and be like, so the president is finally attacking the Hospitallers. Like, he's going to see that, maybe
Yep.
Snake, takes out a couple of these motherfuckers and he's like, Church, what the hell's going on? And like, maybe he could pile into the carriage with them as they're like escaping the gang territory, heading back to the neutral zone. And we could have like a quiet moment where, Dallas and Kanker explained to Snake and Church what they've discovered, like what Dallas discovered and what Kanker has experienced. And then, of course, Snake's not going to be surprised and he's going to be like, yeah, okay, so what of it? Like, he doesn't give a shit because he wanted this. Like, he wanted to take down society and escape from LA. So
Yeah. Well, real quick, there should be a detail here where, because this is the first like action sequence that we get to see Snake in, sort of escaping New Vegas in this like hospitaller cabbie thing with Church, is he should have his gas mask on when he first gets engaged, and he's just kind of like helping out a fellow hospitaller guy, right? That's all it is at first, and then President King Caesar's dudes are like swarming him, and clearly there's more to this, and we're maybe not saying this to the audience, but like the subtext here is that of course Snake is going to always take an opportunity to kick any government goon in the nuts,
of course.
Right? But during this fight, his gas mask should get knocked off, so we finally have the true reveal, not just to the audience because we saw him earlier, but like to everybody, and have everybody to sort of stop and gasp like, oh, it's Snake Plissken, it's Snake Plissken, Snake Plissken, like the voice, and then of course, and then somebody's got to say something like, oh, I thought he'd be tougher or whatever, like one of those, like like I thought he'd be taller, or I thought you'd be dead, or whatever, like from the previous movies, like we add in like a new one, right? And then there's a sort of like pause in the action before President King Caesar's dudes are like, well, who gives a fuck? And then they just go right back to fighting. So of course, Snake and Church got to fight everybody off, and there's just like guns and knives and whatever. And then they get out of town, and it's when they're in the cab, like you said, this quiet moment. This is when Dallas can be like, but you're fucking Snake Plissken, like this is right up your alley, right? Because she's just thinking like, oh, you're like a freedom fighter, but he was just like, no, like you didn't like get the point of what I did, like I don't know if he's going to explain it to her because he doesn't talk much, but yeah, to your point, like he started all of this,
right? So okay, so yeah, to your point, like we do need a Snake reveal scene. So let's have when Church and like let's have the goon squad start catching up to Church on the road. So like they're shooting at him, like Dallas and Kanker are like hiding in the back seat of like the fucked up car carriage, and Church is like slinging guns over his shoulder, shooting back at him like pew pew. He they get into the gang zone, and the gangs could be like, what the fuck is going on? Like, that's a hospitaller carriage. Like, you can't do that. You're breaking the rules. And then maybe they don't know that these are like, the president's men. Maybe it literally is like a hired merc squad, like something where it wouldn't be like no one would link it back to President King Caesar, they would just be like, who the fuck are these guys? And just a gunfight would break out because it's a gang territory. No one cares. So we would have this like whole thing, like, the circle the wagons moment where like Church gets into town, hops off his friggin' mule and he's, rolling behind friggin' barrels and shit, using his like multiple Derringers and 6-shooters, just fucking plugging dudes, like, getting guys' heads exploding. Like, we want to have like an all out crazy action fest here, kind of like the hang glider scene in Escape from LA, where there's just fucking gunfire, shit's blowing up, fires are starting, dudes are doing the Wilhelm scream and flipping over flaming barrels, that kind of thing.
Yes,
like
perfect.
We're seeing all that, and of course, Snake's gonna come out of his tent, like he's gonna wake up, like he was resting for the night, like what the fuck is going on? He's gonna see Church in a fight, realize the Hospitallers are being attacked. He's gonna get in on the fight. So he's, fucking shooting people, knocking people over, like making his way through the crowd. And let's have him miss somebody. Like maybe they're on his blind side. They're on his eye patch side. And they fucking shoot at him. And it like rips through it, like the front of his gas mask, like knocks it off. And then have him like, turn, like hold his hand up, like pull some blood back from his hand. Like, like he got grazed. Then turn and look at the crowd, and everybody sees it's Snake, and like the collective gasp, like, oh, do you know who that is? Like, oh, it's like everyone's whispering,
exactly.
And then just have like one chooch make the comment of like, huh, I thought it was his other eye that was shot out, or something
Oh.
like that. So some kind of like new comment of the I thought he'd be taller, I thought he'd be dead, but like just that one quiet moment before, like, and maybe have Snake, like, when he's looking at the blood, just look back up at the guy and shoot him in the face. That just have the brawl break out again, so everyone starts fighting and killing each other. So we have this big gang fight. Have Snake get to Church explain, like, he's got two people needing sanctuary, he needs to get back to the Hospitaller camp. So Snake helps Church get back to the carriage, and they're like shooting off the gang members and all that. They get into the Church starts riding the mule, taking him out of town. Snake is in the back of the carriage, fucking shooting the goon squad as they escape while the gang fights with the goon squad. So it's like they escape under the cover of the brawl.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I'm gonna sort of think ahead here to imagine, okay, what else do we need to do from a storytelling perspective? And I'm not going to like lay it out beat for beat, but just as a as one of the screenwriters here, thinking, okay, so we have to do this, then we have to do this, and like ultimately we need to get to a confrontation with President King Caesar and deal with this like these like Project Exodus ships or whatever. So honestly, like I'm seeing a pretty straightforward through line to Snake's going to get involved and they're going to kick a whole lot of ass, and there's going to be a little bit of a we got to get to the bunker kind of a thing.
Yes.
But we already front loaded a lot of story with Dallas, her whole story, and finding out the secrets that President King Caesar was into, and learning about the Infinity Virus, and meeting Kanker. Like we really front loaded a lot of story to the point where like at this, we used up the whole first third of the movie and barely even had Snake in it. Like he almost comes in at like the end of that first act. So yep. I think it would be really cool for an escape movie if the whole second act was just this long drawn out Mad Max style fight across the countryside. We take we take this fight out of this little like gang town, out of Vegas, out of the gang town, and it's like they're just gonna be fighting like crazy all the way to the Hospitaller, or all the way to one of the neutral zones, which is sort of like that's the end zone, right? They have to get there for either our runaways to be safe, or like the gang's got to stop them before they have to like stop at that at that wall of safety, right? It's like that's the deadline. So like as this fight is ramping up, it's just escalating in this town. More and more and more people are getting involved, to the point where like on the fringes of the fight, you've got gangs who are just using the excuse of violence to just fight old rivalries, and they don't even know Snake is even there, because you know what I mean, like
right,
they're so far away, they're like removed from the center of it. But imagine the spectacle of this action sequence where you take this like Mad Max caravan of like motorcycles and dune buggies, or whatever they can do with the technology they have, like Flintstone cars or whatever the fuck, hell, maybe they've got like what are those things where people like sail surfboards across like salt flats, you know what I mean, those things.
Yeah. I forget what those are called, but I know what you're talking about.
Just all kinds of crazy vehicles, and it's this crazy fight. They run out of bullets and resort to knives and swords, but like the camera's gonna pull out, and there's like thousands of people moving in a throng, throwing hands.
Oh shit! Well, yeah. Oh, dude. Okay, hold on. I love this, because this would be like the big second act like battle. So we have the ignition point being the gang town, right? Like where everyone's fighting. Like we get Snake involved, and like to your point, like other people are just like, what the hell's going on over there? It looks like a fight. And like, fuck you, buddy, and they just start fighting. So now it's like you got brawls popping up all across this gang town. Well, what we should have is like, because like we said, Snake and Church and them, they escape under the cover of the brawl. Maybe it's like a several day travel back to the next Hospitaller zone, which is why like Snake caught a ride with Church on his way to Vegas. Like Church had to make a delivery to Vegas, and Snake was like, hey, I got to stop at this town along the way, and it's a hell of a long travel alone, that type of a thing. So he took the carriage. So now they have to make their way back, and they're out in the wild, and now fucking the president's goons are after them, and there's a giant brawl happening like a mile behind them. So what if the I don't know how we want to do this. If we want, somehow we have to get word back to, President King Caesar that not only did Church and Dallas and Kanker get away, but they got Snake Plissken on their side, and have him be like, Snake Plissken? Who the hell's Snake Plissken? And maybe have like one other person just be like, oh, he was a gunfighter and a freedom fighter, and he unleashed the sword of Damocles upon the world, and like just kind of like listing all of the things, and have him be like, oh, he's an asshole, kill him, I want him dead, just something like that, and then just basically go out on his little fucking terrace at his Caesar's Palace Hotel, like the new seat of power. Goes out on the terrace and like basically tells all of the gangs that are living in like lower Vegas, tells them like he's gonna pay handsomely for anyone that can bring him the head of Snake Plissken. So now you get this giant fucking caravan of insanity. Everyone wants the head of Snake because it's like, if I get him first, I get a year free beer, something like that. So it's like, you got, like, to your point, you see like they are still going to have fuel. So it's like you get these rickety old trucks, and you got people on horseback and people on those fucking windsurfers, and maybe you got like a dude in a little gyrocopter like in Mad Max 2, just like go flying by.
Yeah. And you gotta have the camera pan through this whole crowd, because I want this to be like a long sequence. Like, this needs to be the kind of thing where action movie fans will be talking about it for years. Like, it's the biggest, longest fight scene ever in a movie. It's just constant. Like, they're traveling while they're fighting, and it's like everything imaginable, every weapon, like chains, guns, like
explosions, Molotovs,
jujitsu, like they should. One of the guys should be like a falconer, and he's the one who like sends the message back to President King Caesar, like a falconer with like a message tied to him, and then he sends it back, and then you see this one guy in the crowd every once in a while just like sicking raptors on people, like
like the fucking Cobra Raptor guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it would be so cool. Like, we just imagine all of these like action figure type silly characters, and like that's, you see them all through the crowd, like people like breathing fire, and like just, and then they would cast everybody in Hollywood who is just like a crazy like bit character actor, like the super tall guys and like the martial art guys, and like you'd get everybody of every body shape and size. It would just
you'd have like the really like big dudes like behind like the wheel of a Mack truck or something. It's got like flames shooting off of it. Like, picture Mad Max Fury Road, that big chase sequence where you got the blind guy with the guitar that's spitting fire, and there's like the guys on the poles. Like, picture that times 100. Like, we're just all out insanity.
It would go so long that we would cut back to like Snake and Dallas and Kanker, like in like the cabbie vehicle, and they would literally be like sleeping in shifts while like one of them is like kicking people off the side of the vehicle. Like it's like it lasts, like it could last, like I said, for days. Like it's just the longest, most insane action movie fight sequence in Hollywood history.
Yes, and like what I'm picturing is like, when President King Caesar sends out the message of like, whoever brings me the head of Snake Plissken, like I'll basically, he'll grant them whatever they want, like almost like grant them 3 wishes, like you can have beer, women, and money, whatever you need, that type of thing. And we see that throng of vehicles and mercenaries and gang members go flying out of Vegas. What I'm picturing is you still got the brawl happening in the little gang town that is on the road to Vegas. So that brawl's happening, and then you just see this giant tidal wave of vehicles and gangs just coming toward that town and just plow through the fucking town, just like ripping people apart. Like, that town is fucking toast when they travel through it. And then so now keep in mind, Church and them, they're traveling by fucking mule carriage. So he's riding along, and then you're gonna hear the rumble. It's gonna be like the T-Rex scene in Jurassic Park. Like,
nice, yeah.
And they're gonna turn. They'll see the dust cloud in the distance and hear all the, like all the screaming and yelling. And be like, oh fuck, It's like, here comes the tidal wave of bad guys.
Yeah.
So to your point, we have the massive fight.
Oh yeah, and at some point, Church should just like let the mule go and be like, sorry, Sally, I'll find you, girl, and he like slaps her on the rump, so she goes off running, and then of course, Snake and Dallas are like, what the hell, man? Like, we can't stop and fight these guys, like, but instead, he like, he takes his seat off of the front of this like this wagon car hybrid thing, and
Mhm.
there's like a boat engine under there that he like pulls the ripcord on and like fires it up, and then he like hits the nos, and they like they race across the countryside on a fucking like outboard motor jerry rigged into this thing with fucking like it's just
Yes.
spitting flames out the back of it.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. See, I thought you were gonna say they were gonna take a stand, but I like this better. So, so they fucking take off with a weird little like carriage mobile, as the gangs are following. And yeah, to your point, like the Snake's picking guys off. Guys are jumping on the carriage. Dallas is like bashing their head in the wall and hucking them back into the crowd where they're getting run over by like semis and shit. Oh, okay. I don't know if we want to do this, but just concept here. What if one of the guys jumps on, like one of the bad guys jumps on the caravan or the carriage, and he's attacking Dallas, like maybe he gets her like in a chokehold, Snake is fighting somebody else, and Kanker bites the guy that is attacking Dallas, and the guy starts screaming, and we see like his veins turn black, his eyes like go all fucked up, like he's instantly infected with the Infinity virus, even though Kanker is not showing any signs of like
Hmm.
still being contagious. And then the fucking dude like leaps back onto one of the trucks and just starts ripping people apart in the caravan of gangs.
Yeah.
Like, so now they're now going to be fighting amongst themselves because they're one by one they're getting turned into the fucking zombies.
Yeah.
And
This is the perfect place to have the dialogue show up where Snake can be like, what the fuck was that? The Infinity virus? Like, I thought that, was, contained or whatever. And
or that
that's
was
when,
government rumor.
yeah, exactly. And that's when, Dallas is like, well, that's why we had to get out of town. And like, we won't repeat it here, but like, this is the impetus for us to get into the middle of this conversation. But it's going to be more exciting, I think, than having a quiet moment if instead, Dallas and Kanker are sort of yelling their explanation as to like why they need Snake's help, why they really need his help while they're like fighting people off of this like wagon mobile. And so
Right.
of course and Snake, he has no choice, he's already involved, and you're going to see him like grit his teeth and like narrow that one eye, and then you can see him like making a decision in his head of like, fuck, man, like now
Yep.
I'm in this, like I can't, this is more than just like an escort mission to the neutral zone. And so we'll have another quiet moment when they do finally get there and have a chance to breathe. And by then, instead of having to be convinced to help, by the time they get there, he's the one who's going to be like, tell me everything,
Yes. Oh, I like that. Okay, so yeah, so we have that whole scene that you just described. Like, after Kanker bites the guy, he gets infected. He jumps back onto one of the trucks, starts attacking the driver. Maybe the truck veers off and crashes into several other vehicles. We see a big explosion and more vehicles come driving around the explosion, like still chasing after the carriage. But we could see like the chaos happening amidst the crowd. Like it's spreading fast. So now we have the gang members fighting against, the turned Infinity zombies. Like they're fighting. So now they're getting some ground like separated between the carriage and the gang. Because now it's like they're not just all single-mindedly chasing one target and kind of like trying to beat each other, a little bit like ramming each other. Now they're like literally killing each other. So we see Snake, Church, Dallas, and Kanker like getting further away, and that explanation that you were talking about was happening during all of this. And as they're getting away from the crowd, maybe have Snake be like, all right, so what the hell's the plan? Or like, tell me everything or something like that. Like, tell me everything I need to know. So this is where we don't have to repeat the quiet moment, because again, as the audience, we already showed them, the president's plan. We already showed them the Infinity virus. We showed them Kanker being studied, all that, and then we showed it on screen to the characters, during the Infinity virus like mini outbreak in the gang fight. So of course we could do the thing where like Snake could be like, tell me everything, and then just cut. We could cut back to like, King Caesar maybe, talking to his people, being like, I want to know what's going on out there. Like, this could jeopardize everything we've worked for. Like him flipping out, and then cut to like a quiet moment of Snake and everybody on the road, like we could still hear the fighting in the distance. Like it's not so far away, but we could still hear people screaming and explosions and all that, and have Snake be like, all right, so he's gonna get off of Earth. Nah, we're gonna stop that from happening. Something like, he's basically like, fuck that guy. He's not getting out of here. Like, we're gonna stop that. Like, because again, now it's new government. He's gonna fucking hate that.
Yeah, and I'm picturing, like, again, we can fast forward because as the audience we know everything. We know that Snake knows everything. To your point too, that we can kind of cut, and we should cut to, we see. I'm picturing the scene where you see it's like all dark. It's like in the desert or wilderness outside of Vegas, and you see Snake's head just kind of pop up over like a little ridge of rock, like he's looking. He's scouting something out, and what we see is him looking back to where this fight is going on, like a thunderstorm kind of across the way, and it's like they got to the town, they snuck out like the back sideway, and now they're, I don't know, a couple hundred yards away, far enough away where they can kind of sneak through some cracks and ravines, and we see that he's got Dallas and Kanker and Church and maybe a couple of other like random guys, that we saw or that he recruited at the Hospitaller town to like come and help with them. But whatever, there's a little crew. And so while that fight is still going on and just kind of like, moving like I said, moving like a storm across the horizon, they've snuck back the other direction because, of course, they need to go back to or in the direction of Las Vegas because they're on the way to that bunker. And I think the plan is that Dallas wants to show him, hey, this is like where I think the bunker is. Like, I was brought in through inside the town, and like I don't know, we can't go in there, we can't infiltrate, but like I think it's whatever, like there's a back door, or it's over here, or it's outside of town, or something where they're gonna try to like sneak in.
Okay. Well, you figure if it's a bunker, it would have to have some kind of like ventilation system, something to like, get air down there. So maybe like somewhere in the desert area, there is some kind of like piping, some kind of like, covered off grate or something. I don't know how, like maybe Kanker is the one that knows, where it is, like fucking Gollum leading the hobbits into Mordor.
Yeah. That's perfect. He can let them know. He was like, I was down there for so long, with nothing to do but like study the, grates in the ceiling. And, maybe he knows, he's like, I could hear running water, or I could hear, animals or something, where it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Sneakers. There's a scene in the movie Sneakers where, I forget which character it is, who is like blind. Oh, it's Robert Redford, who's blindfolded and like kidnapped somewhere in the back of a van, and he has to describe the sounds that he heard while he was in the van blindfolded. So he's like, oh, there was this thumping noise and this rumbling noise, and they literally figure out what road that the van had been driving on based on the sound it made on the tires. And so maybe not to that point, but Kanker kind of describes what he was hearing and smelling or whatever, and so they know they can go back around to Vegas. They know it's on like, I don't know, the east side of town or something, and just based on those clues, Kanker's going to zero them into like, oh, listen, that's what I was hearing. It was the sound of this goat farmer over here or whatever. And like, and then Snake's going to use his like military training to figure out, well, they must have had ventilation, and oh, look, there's a water source right here. Yeah. And they follow the infrastructure to, where they think it is. And of course there's some kind of like a big hatch that you turn, outside. It's like the back door,
Hold on a second. I'm trying to figure out what the third act, like what the end game here, like what the final fight is going to look like. Because originally what I was thinking was like, because they find out the information, they find out like what happened with Kanker, they find out what the president's plan is, that he's going to leave Earth, and let the Infinity Virus run rampant and take everybody out. He's going to bring all of his inner circle. Maybe like I was thinking Snake would have to like convince the Hospitallers, like, we can't be neutral anymore. Like, we can't stand down. Like, we have to fight back because, he's going to kill everybody. All the people you've helped, all the people that you like, the societies we've built are going to collapse because of yet another bureaucrat, that type of a thing. And have him like, so now you got all these fucking monks taking up arms and just like heading off to Vegas. And it's just like, so there's like this army of like martial art fucking monks like coming into Vegas. And then we have like Snake, Dallas, and Kanker like sneak into the bunker to try to sabotage the ship. But the thing I was trying to get to is that like when they get down there, there's already like a shitload of guards, and the king is already loading the ship like ready to take off, because it's like, fuck this, like it's game time, like shit's going bad, we got to get out of here. So
I think you just solved it. Sorry, I tried to cut you off. I think you just solved it though, because you're totally right. We need to stop before Snake and the crew like sneak out of the Hospitaller town, and we do that sequence where you said where he convinces the leaders of the Hospitallers we gotta do this one thing. Like, this guy is more evil than anything we've dealt with before, and for the sake of the survival of all humanity, and for everything that you guys are trying to do, we got to take this guy down. So he convinces them to come with him. Now it isn't just him and Dallas and Kanker and Church who sneak out. It's like this whole militia of Hospitaller guys who are taking up arms where maybe they hadn't in a long time, and and they're gonna go, and to my point, like, they're gonna then go and like find out where they think the bunker is. But what I said before about how you solved it is like, hey, Kanker bit that dude earlier on in the fight and spread the Infinity Virus throughout this like fucking thunderstorm of a fight that's been raging across the countryside. Well, it's what if it kind of goes backwards too, right? So it's almost coincidental timing, but perfect for a movie, that while Dallas and Snake convinced the Hospitallers to go raid the bunker, at the same time the Infinity Virus is raging all through this huge throng of people backwards, back to the gang town, back to Vegas. And now President King Caesar has heard word that, hey, it's the Infinity Virus is, it's not contained. It's like raging wild through everybody. And that's when he's like, well, I had a good run. And he's just like, fuck it, we're out of here. Take the inner circle and blow this popsicle stand,
fucking perfect.
Only to get down there, like you said, he gets down there, and then here comes Snake and the Hospitallers who are raiding in from the back door. And now you got two armies, not everybody that Caesar had, because of course the ships only have so many people, but now you have like this army on one side and this like this guerrilla militia on the other side, just prime for another big fight.
Perfect. So yeah, so the the Infinity Virus has made it back to Vegas. The president's just like, well, fuck it, got to get out of here. But we have the friggin' Hospitaller militia and Snake and everybody sneaking in into the bunker. So maybe like the president orders his people to start loading up the supplies on the ship. So when he gets down there with his guards, we're gonna see like Snake and the fucking militia coming through the back door, and there's gonna be like almost like that, the stare down at high noon type of thing, like where both parties kind of stop and look at each other. Actually, even better, it's like the scene in Big Trouble in Little China where the
Nice.
two crowds like stand, they like look at each other, and then it's just like, rah! They all start brawling. Like, so
yes.
You get the monks running in with fucking like bow staffs and shit, like knocking people's guns out and clubbing them in the face and poking their eyes and shit. And then like, of course Snake is going to be fighting with some of like the elite guards while the president is like running, trying to get back to the ship. So he gets on board and all that. And maybe Dallas tries to stop him and he shoots her. Like, somebody's got to get hurt. And I don't want it to be Church. So let's have like Dallas get wounded, so she goes down. It's like and Snake and Church go after the president, and they get on the ship with him. They're trying to stop him, but he fucking he throws the ignition switch and he sets the shit off. So he's about to take off Earth, like he's escaping from Earth. So like we could have some people on the ship with him, like maybe like his maintenance crew or whatever, just be like, oh shit, and they're all strapping in and all that. Now, do we want to have anyone other than Snake and Church and maybe Kanker get on the ship with him?
Well, I'm gonna say I'm okay with Dallas getting hurt, but I would like her to maybe she comes back unexpectedly to like get on the ship. Like, I thought she was dead, but I don't think that Kanker should go, because I don't think that the Infinity Virus should go. To be
Yeah. Well,
honest,
because I had an idea with Kanker.
Yeah, I'm fine either way. I don't know that I want the Infinity Virus, to go to wherever they're going. I don't know that that's the right story move. But like, hey, if you have a cool idea, I'm fine with it. If somebody has to die, I would kill Kanker, but have him sacrifice himself in some
That's what I was.
heroic way, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, let's do that then.
Okay. So yeah, so maybe Dallas, like she's not down for the count. Like she gets injured, and maybe that's what like catches Snake's attention to like, the fucking president just shot Dallas, like you motherfucker. Like so now like Church, Snake, Kanker, and maybe like one of the monks or something, they go running after him, and like Dallas, maybe she gets up, like she's holding her shoulder where she got shot, she's like, I'm not fucking down yet, that kind of thing. Like she's
Yeah.
pissed.
She's
So like
tough.
yeah, she's a fucking gladiator. So like they chase him onto the ship, and like of course there's gonna still be guards and all that, so they're fighting the guards, and like Kanker slips through the crowd and he chases after the fucking president. And then have like, the president like getting in his little like his little chair, strapping himself in, and have Kanker grab a hold of him after the president has strapped himself in, thinking he's safe, and have him just look at him and be like, it's your turn now, and just fucking bites him in the throat.
Yes.
So like the president's just like, oh god, like what the hell? And then have Kanker unbuckle him, grab him, and start dragging him toward the exit. And have Snake look at him like, what the hell are you doing? Like the ship is moving. Have him just be like, I don't know, some kind of like goodbye to Snake, just like, farewell, friend, something like that, and fucking jump out of the ship with the president.
Yeah. Oh, dude, this would be a great, even more tension right here is as he's dragging the president away, the president's going to start to turn, right? It's the Infinity Virus. So he's going to start turning black. He's going to start like foaming at the mouth. And like as Kanker's dragging him toward the door, the president's going to start getting up and like they're going to be struggling. And that's when Snake is going to be like, what the hell are you doing? And he runs over with like a gun and have Kanker just be like, no, stop, like let it happen, and they get to the door and then he just looks at, Snake, does, like the music just goes quiet for a second. He's like, make it a better world, and then he just jumps out into like the flames that are rushing up from like the engines that are firing.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, it's the Gollum moment of falling into Mount Doom. It's fucking Kanker dragging the president like out of the ship. And they fly back, like the ship, maybe it's like it's up there, so they fall out and they get fucking blasted with the jet engines and just get incinerated, so it's like, and then we follow their ashes as they're sprinkling down on the crowd fighting below.
Nice.
And maybe we could see like the monks are starting to win, like they're starting to like take down the crowd and like contain the virus.
Yeah, awesome, perfect. Actually, I think the Kanker should say, "Find a better world." Like that would be a cool like little hook.
Yeah.
Like find a better world, and he jumps out. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, and it could be President King Caesar. His people weren't done. They were prepping to leave, loading the ships and all this, and then he kind of like fired the engines early because of like the chaos of being raided. So that ship or ships or whatever, I guess it's just one ship, right? And it could have held 1,200 people, but instead you get like maybe a couple of dozen hospitalers and like random people who are helping out like Snake and the crew from the neutral town, or maybe a couple of people on the president's side who realized the tide was turning and they flipped, and you know what I mean, like
right.
So
or we
like,
could even have just like service personnel who were like, hey man, I was just, I was just loading the ship, or like, hey, I'm just flying, something like that, or what, maybe not flying because it would be an autopilot thing. But like, we could have some, just service personnel.
Yeah, exactly. Like we could even have a scene where maybe like Dallas goes to like, like strike somebody down, and the dude's just like, hey man, I'm just in the union, and
hey, I just work for him, man. Like, I didn't vote for him.
Exactly. Oh God, exactly.
Sorry.
No, I mean, am I the only one who's picturing President King Caesar wearing an orange 3-piece suit? Is it just me?
Oh yeah. No, that fits. That fits really well.
Right, exactly. Right. I mean, am I wrong? That
definitely has a hairpiece, dude. Definitely.
Definitely. It's a really big, like blonde, huge hairpiece.
it's like an Elvis pompadour, but it's clearly a hairpiece. And when he jumps out of the ship, it like peels off.
Oh yeah, exactly. It should be like just really badly like taped to his head throughout the whole movie. He's always like fixing it. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Oh,
when Kanker like jumps out the door with him, like it peels off and it lands on the floor, and you see Snake just like kick it out the door.
yes.
Oh man.
Well. Now we have the they've left Earth, so now they're in this ship and they're like cruising through space. And of course we're gonna have like some quiet moments. We'll have like Church. Maybe he's singing some hymnal. Happy. He don't care. He's just happy to be there. He's just singing along. We could have like the hospitallers. Maybe they're tending to the wounded. Like the people who've been wounded in the fight. And have Snake and Dallas like trying to figure out like where the hell are we going? Like where is this ship going? It's on autopilot. Like there are no pilots, so like what's the plan here? So maybe they're like in the control room like looking, and we need to have like a stinger moment or some kind of like cliffhanger, because like this will tie into something else that we have discussed many times off the air. And so I don't know how this is going to work, but what I'm picturing is, if the government had this plan for Project Exodus way back during the president from Escape from LA, so like before the Sword of Damocles was initiated, they would have some kind of contingency plan. And that contingency plan was this bunker, with the Project Exodus and the Genesis Sphere and the Infinity Virus and all that, basically like a scorched Earth, get to Earth 2 protocol. So that was already in plan. So they would have to have somewhere to go. So what if there's like some kind of fucking, military space station out there, that the ship is heading toward, and have it be like, have one of the monitors in the control room turn on, and just have like this, there's like a person in like a, I don't want to say like a stormtrooper garb, but like some kind of like, helmet, like a military looking like helmet and gear, and have him be like, identify yourself, or incoming vessel from Earth, identify yourself. And have Snake be like, who the hell is that? And be like, we've lost contact with Earth for the last 5 years. Who are you? And have him be like, he like, call me Snake. That whole thing.
Yes, I was just about to say the same thing. I was like, please say, call me Snake.
Yeah. And then like have the person take the fucking mask off, and it's Marion Cobretti. Have him be like, I'm speaking on behalf of the president, something like that. And have Snake be like, oh, not again. And just have it cut there. Like,
yeah.
Have it just end. Black screen credits.
Oh my God.
So Snake's story is not over. He will return in Cobra 3, Cobra in Space.
Fuck yeah, dude. I know. Okay, so we'll peel the curtain back a little bit just to like let people in on the fact that like the entire reason that we agreed on choosing Escape from Earth as the first episode for season 4 was because we were like, oh dude, we could bring back Cobra at the end, and it was like, okay, cool. We have to make this work. We have to find a way to get Snake Plissken in space so that Snake can meet Cobra in space.
Because then it's like, as you pointed out, it's like Tango and Cash Part 2.
Hell yeah.
Oh my God,
this was all an excuse for a terrible Tango and Cash joke.
Oh my God.
Welcome to season 4.
Oh, exactly. I don't know. I literally have zero ideas at the moment for Cobra in Space, but we joked about it so many times, like, because like I think we even joked about it on like an episode or two after Cobra 2, where we're like, we should come back to Cobra this time in space, or like, like we made a space joke with Cobra at some point. So that's always been in my brain that eventually we're gonna come back to Stallone. He's gonna be in space.
Yeah.
I have no idea how, but we're gonna do it.
Exactly, and I was completely on board, but had no idea like what we were going to do, how we were going to get there. So yeah, we're trying to plan like, what do we do for the first episode? It has to be something like fun. I don't really want to do horror not that I worry that much about doing too much horror, but like, you know,
Yeah.
we do a lot of it through the holiday season. So it's like, how do we do something cool to like kick off the first season? And it was like, you know what? You know what we should do is we should definitely just not just for the first episode, but through all of season 4. There's a bunch of stuff we kept saying we were gonna do, but we haven't gotten to it yet. It's like
Mhm.
long promised ideas, and sometimes it's just between you and me, and sometimes it's stuff we've discussed on the show. So I'm trying to build our recording schedule around let's do some of these like long promised ideas. So right from the very beginning, it's like, well, fuck it, dude, Cobra in space. We keep talking about it. Like, how do we do that? So this entire idea was just a preamble. It's like, okay, we need like a prequel to get, you know, Snake in space to meet Cobra. So we like back engineered this entire idea of trying to figure out how Snake Plissken escapes from Earth.
Oh my god! And I still, I fucking love. I honestly, I genuinely like what we came up with. Like, I would have enjoyed this bizarre Mad Max meets Escape from, the Escape movies. Like that just it's Mad Max with Snake Plissken. I think that's fun.
Yeah,
Like, I would
absolutely.
have loved that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't just about, getting to Cobra. It was about, I wanted, again, I wanted to set up the terrible Tango and Cash 2 joke. So we, but, but Escape from New York is one of those things that it keeps coming up. It was never on the schedule, but like every time
Mhm.
that we start brainstorming ideas, it's like one of the things that comes up. It's a big VHS era property that,
Yeah.
we consider, just like Arnie movies and Stallone movies. And it's like, okay, well, what else happened in the VHS era? Well, fucking Kurt Russell was an action movie star. I think maybe people forget that because he does different types
Oh
of
yeah.
movies these days. And Escape from New York and Escape from LA were, a big deal to a certain type of moviegoer. So yeah,
Oh
I'm
hell yeah.
definitely happy that we did Escape from Earth. Like this has been an absolute like shit ton of fun. I love the story we came up with. I love this whole cool backstory with the President King Caesar and the virus, and like I think there's a lot of cool stuff here. And I do have an idea for what I think the space station is supposed to be and why it's there, but
Oh
I'll
perfect.
save it. I'll save it for Cobra 3. Cobra in space.
Of course, we're gonna have to. We'll figure it out during the episode, but we are going to need a third player, kind of like when we get to Lethal Weapon 4, how they have to have they had Joe Pesci. Like we need that third player, just how we added Sinbad and Cobra 2. We'll figure something out, but I guarantee you we're gonna have a blast with that one.
Oh yeah,
It's gonna be fun.
it's gonna be so much fun. Yeah, I have a couple of ideas for like fun characters we can populate, and I don't know what the plot's gonna be. I can just picture like I want to put some characters together and see what happens, and I think that we can come up with something if if we're both on board with like who our action figures are. Like we'll
Right.
figure it out.
Oh
um,
man, what a great way to kick open season 4. That was fun.
hell yeah, dude, hell yeah. Oh man, so now as usual, I'm exhausted. Like
Right. I don't think people realize how like mentally taxing it can be to like constantly try to improv on the fly. It drains you.
yeah, it's a lot of mental power, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
like I just worked all day today and I'm a project manager, so I just, I sit at a desk and make spreadsheets, but I'm like thinking and organizing and pestering people and like crunching numbers. So I'm like using my brain all day. So by the end of the workday, I always need a minute to like just go lay down somewhere and like turn my
Right.
brain off because it's like it's just mentally exhausting, not physically, but it's mentally exhausting. And but
Oh yeah.
today we rolled right into the recording, so it was like, oh god, like we've been recording for a while now, and it's like I need a drink and a break, and I need no one to talk to me for a little while.
Yep. And that's the
um
thing. Like, I literally rolled out of bed, showered, grabbed a cup of coffee, and got online. I'm like, oh, okay, let's go. Let's do
I
this.
know. And now you have to go to work. So, anyway,
Yep.
as I promised toward the beginning of the episode, we are going to reveal the winner of our morgue file vote, the formerly dead episode idea that you, our fans, voted to resurrect. I looked at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We didn't get a ton of votes, but enough where your voice has been heard. And of the 10 choices, there were 2 front runners, but the winner is Weekend at Bernie's, but Bernie is a zombie.
Oh man, that's gonna be fun. That's gonna present some really weird ideas.
Absolutely. The first of which is I'm already toying with the idea of titling the episode Weekend at Bitey's.
Yes.
We'll see if I do that. Oh, man. Anyway, thanks for tuning into season 4. Thanks for listening to us ramble through this long episode. But we hope that you enjoyed this idea. We hope that you come back for Cobra 3 and for, Weekend at Bernie's, where Bernie is a zombie. We have a really cool rental rant coming up. Another one of those like long promised ideas that we're going to get back to. A lot of great episodes coming up this season. But in the meantime, you can find out more about this show at RaiseboRentals.com and at Raisebo Rentals on all the socials. Of course, as I always mention, we are a part of the Rad Pantheon, a super team of podcasters, artists, musicians, an art collective of creative friends supporting each other to spread the word about rad stuff. If you like this show, go check out RadPantheon.com, at Rad Pantheon on the socials. So check out more awesome creative projects. What about you, Mike? What do you got going on in 2025?
Well, the Boogeyman's Closet is slowly getting back on its feet. It's been a rough month, but we have Hellraiser, Child's Play 2, and a new Nightmare on the docket, as well as a few fun little specials coming up. And then, of course, Count Creepyhead Saturday Morning Monster Mash. Go check that out, where 3 grown man children bitch about pop culture and talk about Muppets. So it's always good times.
I love how it's so many Muppets now that it just becomes a part of the explanation. It used to be like 3 grown man children talk about toys, and then it was like bitch about pop culture, and now it's just Muppets.
It's always Muppet. Kermit became a regular character. It's Kermit and Werner.
Yeah.
They're part of the show.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, go check out Count Creepyhead Saturday Morning Monster Mash and all the other projects at RadPantheon.com. Once again, thanks to everyone for tuning into the Raisebo Rentals program. If you had fun with us, visit us online, drop us a line, leave a comment, leave a podcast rating. Let us know what you think we should improve next time. And with that, I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we have to return some videotapes. Raised by Rentals is a member of the Rad Pantheon Network. Visit radpantheon.com to support rad stuff. The theme music is Forbidden Fruit by Velvet Bethany. You can purchase music and learn more at velvetbethany.com.
Call me Snake.